Hello and welcome to the Chris and Bud Show. My name is Chris Scarborough, and with me is my co-host, my friend, and my brother in pod, Mr. Bud Bohannon. Together, we'll be taking you on a nostalgic ride discussing a wide array of topics from our childhood through today, hoping to share a bunch of laughs along the way.
You know what time it is. It's time.
No, not yet.
Can I go now?
Yeah, now.
It's time for the Chris and Bud Show.
Welcome back. Today we are talking about Arrow, Season 2. This happens to be mine and Bud's favorite season of Arrow. It's sort of all downhill from here. So without further ado, I'll let Bud say hi real quick.
Hola.
All right. And then we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We're not going to waste any time. Basically, it starts off Episode 1. It's City of Heroes. They lay a lot of groundwork for the season to come. There's a lot of changing that goes on in this particular episode. Oliver, he's nowhere to be found. He's in Lian-Yu, or rather, Arrow's nowhere to be found, right? Dig and Felicity couldn't find him. Eventually they do, and they're able to find him, that he's on Lian-Yu. There's a couple little funny interactions between Diggle and Felicity while they're on the airplane, which was pretty good. They talk about Star City and how, they talk about Flash, a little bit about the particle accelerator.
Central City.
Or Central City, yes. Talking about kind of the differences, or it's going to be live soon by Christmas time, which is really setting the groundwork for Flash, which will be released not long after this. Lance got demoted. He's no longer a detective. He's just a regular beat cop on on patrol. Thea and Roy have taken over Oliver's club. Isabella Rochev has come in to sort of buy up Queen Consolidated, or is attempting to. That's just laying the groundwork for episode 1. We learn a lot more about her as the season progresses, which is awesome. Walter, we find out that he's obviously no longer a part of Queen Consolidated, but he's now a CEO of a bank that helps Oliver buy up the stocks for Queen Consolidated. So him and Isabella are now part owners, or their team. Laurel is no longer working for CNRI. They decided not to reopen their doors in the Glades. Instead, she goes to work for the DA. And then we meet a mysterious woman dressed in all black with poles, as Bud lovingly describes her, or lovingly describes her, who we later find out is obviously Black Canary / Sarah.
Spoiler.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's 2 episodes later? But
I wrote it that way for a reason.
But then you put in parentheses Black Canary / Sarah.
Yeah, that's so we know who we're talking about. It's not to spoil it for the audience.
Oh my goodness. The other couple little things about this particular episode, anyway. Oliver. They convince Oliver to come back because of his mother's trial, but that wasn't the entire thing. Obviously, they want him to try to become the Hood again, and he doesn't want any interest, or doesn't have any interest in becoming the Hood. He really just would prefer just to be Oliver. And he says, because doing what I had to do for my dad, it was a fool's errand, that it was a waste of time because obviously it didn't work, which, it makes him seem like he's, what's what I'm looking for, vulnerable in a lot of ways, right? Oh, it's because of what is the name of that trio? I can't remember what they call themselves. They eventually kidnap the Hoods. Is that that's what they call themselves, right?
I don't remember.
Pretty sure it was the Hoods. And we have them they kidnapped Thea because they couldn't find Oliver, I guess.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's the only reason. And that's why Oliver decides he's got to become the Green Arrow again. And he's trying to change. That's one of, I guess, one of the central themes of this particular season is he wants to get away from becoming a killer. He wants to be what we know of as a superhero, right? And it's not just Arrow, but I mean, Flash doesn't like to kill people. Batman. This is why Joker constantly comes back, right?
I wish they'd do away with that whole moral compass.
Well, Yeah, that one well, in this particular season, I struggle with it. A couple of seasons, a couple episodes in, one of my notes is, see if I can find it.
Yeah, that's probably why
I,
I liked Arrow season 1. Like, it hooked me, is because he was a comic book quote unquote hero, but he killed people. You don't see a lot of that because everybody has that moral code. I hate it.
right. But he wasn't doing it out of the same, like, for example, like a Deathstroke or some of these Punisher, some of the like anti-heroes as they call them, where they kill just because that's their modus operandi or that's what they're doing. Their
Fancy
goal is to kill
word.
people. Yeah. Well, I could just call her MO, right?
Yeah.
That's what they do. Whereas at least even in season 1, he had a moral compass enough where that wasn't his main goal. But if it was if it was life or death situation, he was going to choose to end your life and not his, you know? And then obviously in the flashbacks, Shadow gets captured. Basically, that's the only thing that's important. There's some training going on between Oliver and Wilson Slade, or Slade Wilson. Because you wrote in your notes Wilson, I just kept thinking of the dab volleyball from Castaway.
Yeah.
So I couldn't remember what his first name was.
He was training up his six pack playing intense volleyball games on Leanne U.
Yes. That's mostly a good recap of the first episode, but it did a great job laying the foundation for what's to come. Episode 2, it's called, the name of that episode is Identity. Roy, that's really all I got to say. Roy just gets himself in trouble, right? He's not capable of being this badass yet, but a lot of it is they're just trying to, at least he has a good heart and he has a reason, or he feels like he has a reason to do it.
Yeah, he's finally starting to develop that character now. He's no longer just a thug from the Glades. He's kind of turning his life around.
Yeah. Which is awesome, Obviously, they mentioned Sebastian Blood in the first episode. In this episode, they call him the alderman, which he is. That's a position within the city council. It's Sebastian Blood, of course. China White and what's his name, Bronze Tiger, are here, and you call them Wolverine knockoff.
Yeah,
it is great. That was a great get for them to get Michael J. White, as you mentioned, because he is a true badass, and I think that even still, the fight that they had was still really good. I enjoyed the battle, or it was more battle of wits than anything, and him being able to come out on top, him being Oliver or Arrow.
Yeah, my only thing is I feel like these fights are always too short. I feel like Arrow brings in way too many B-rated bad guys, and they only last for half an episode, to work their way up to the big bad guy. But it's just like they bring in way too many smaller bad guys, and I lose track. I lose interest of half of them.
Yeah, they've done a good job with China White, right? Where she's still like one of those quote unquote like B bad guys, or bad girls, whatever. But she doesn't.
Yeah, she's still in the show.
Yeah, she keeps moving around. Whereas, I don't remember. I don't think this is the last time we see Bronze Tiger. Can't remember.
It's like when they bring Talia in later on down the road.
Yeah,
she pops in and out from various episodes.
Nyssa. Talia does come in for like 2 episodes, but it was mostly Nyssa.
Okay, I might be getting the names mixed up.
Yeah. Nissa's the lesser known. I think Talia, they didn't want to bring her in at all, because of her connection to Batman. And I think Nyssa, because of her other sister, that's who. That's season 3, but that's who Oliver eventually does marry, is Nyssa. Not and that is I think it's Nyssa, and that is Sarah's girlfriend.
Because Batman and Talia made the current Robin. So yeah.
Right. Yep. So that, I think they just didn't really want it. But I think she does eventually come into the show near the end of the middle of season 3. But anyway, season 2, episode 2. Thea fires Roy, tells him to get his shit together or get out. And he says, "Oh, I don't like ultimatums," which that's typical CW bad writing, but that's like, whatever. I get the point. And then Arrow, which is funny because I don't think that him and Thea ever had a conversation, but him basically telling Roy, "Don't quit the fighting. Well, I'll let you be my eyes and ears." And I thought that was a pretty nice moment, as it kind of put him in that like that Robin role.
Yeah.
Right. Where without him saying he's Robin, but that's kind of the role he got put into. And then they end us on a cliffhanger where Laurel told him not to come back earlier in the episode, and then he came back anyway, and Laurel had him surrounded by the SWAT team.
Dirty
man.
move.
That was it's and I don't know how Oliver is able to compartmentalize his feelings for Laurel, and then like all the bullshit she's sort of put him through.
Because he's thinking with the wrong head. That's why.
Well, I don't know about that. Later in the season, later in this it's a couple episodes down. I'm not at my notes, but where she thinks Oliver's making a move on him, but he's really just trying to, or making a move on her, but he's just trying to protect her. It's in the League of Assassin episode.
Yeah, he's just sending mixed signals. Girls like a challenge too.
They both are, yeah. Particular episode though is the first time Oliver kind of like shows his badassness in the flashbacks. He like bludgeons the hell out of that guy with a rock. I was like, holy shit, man. That was pretty intense. And then obviously they find the cave with the Japanese soldiers and the arrowhead, which he had given to Thea, who then gave to Roy as like a way to come back or something like that.
They're all piecing it together, setting the stage.
Yep. Episode 3, man. I think this is it's called Broken Dolls. I think this is probably so far in this particular season is my favorite episode. You get somebody who truly feels like, and that's the doll maker. You get him. He feels like he's a true challenge, right? He feels like you're finally getting somebody who's a little bit smarter than everybody. He doesn't feel like he's just even though he doesn't feel like he's just the bad guy of the week, right? And this episode was probably one of the most emotional ones, right? It really kind of, there's just so much going on. Him being or him getting out because of the quake, and then Lance trying to figure it out. And then I wrote, one of my notes was very clearly, Pike is an asshole. I don't know what his issue is with Lance, but Lance is easily like the best detective he has, and he just refuses to use him, just I guess because he just maybe he's scared. I don't know. Before all that happens though, Sarah saves Arrow's ass. She makes it so that he doesn't get captured, and that's why people get a little confused thinking she's there for him. This particular episode, obviously Lance turns to Arrow for help because he can't get it from his own squad, which leads to some pretty damn good moments between Arrow and Quentin.
Yep, they're setting that one up too.
Yeah, man, I don't know if I can say this enough, but I think Quentin Lance might be the best character, or maybe it's the guy who plays Quentin Lance is the best.
Good. Yeah,
he might be my favorite character in the entire show. He just, I don't know what it is about him, but he can get into every single, he just gets in the moment so damn good, and it showed a lot in this episode.
He's a good actor, and Diggle's a good actor too for what he does.
Yeah, Diggle's he's number 2 on my. Rewatching it, Lance has passed Diggle because Diggle hasn't gotten out of his shell yet. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, I didn't mention this episode too. Felicity becomes Oliver's assistant, which is imperative, or which is funny down the road. But that's a good line from Diggle, where Diggle says, "Well, I'm just his black driver," Yeah, and I found that pretty funny. That he's like, "Oh, well, you're an assistant. Well, guess what I am? I'm just a black driver." And I thought that was pretty funny, and it's kind of shows his wit. And Felicity talking about she beat up the coffee machine and violently destroyed it, that sort of stuff. It was definitely different, but hilarious. I felt like this is the first episode in all, I don't know, what do we number? This is probably episode 26 total that we've watched. This is the first episode where I believed anything Moira had to say, and I think she was her acting's finally like as if she finally knows the character. You know what I mean? Like her in the prison cell.
I didn't take notes of anything with Moira because all that stuff just bored the shit out of me.
No, I agree. But I'm saying this is for the first time she's finally it feels like she's a part of, or like her and the character aren't separated. The person who plays Moira and Moira, they don't feel like they're two different people. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody acting like her. So I felt like that was a huge improvement. I like the mention of Sin, adding her in for Black Canary. I wrote one little funny note in the flashbacks when Oliver and Slade were running to help Shadow, and Slade is just yelling, "Oliver! Oliver!" And I'm like rolling. I can't even take the part seriously. I was like, what the hell is going on here? I literally wrote LOL because I was laughing so hard during that moment when they're running through the bombs that are going off at the plane. My
Hey,
goodness.
I had a little note too. It says Arrow shoots the lawyer in the shoulder and says he has another shoulder. And
Yeah.
Quentin says he's sorry that he gets enthusiastic sometimes.
Yes. Yes. That I actually didn't write any notes, but that was actually one of the best parts where Quentin is like, come on, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the look on his face, he was like, oh, come on, dude. Really? Goodness. And but it was really good. And when they finally I think, like, for example, Quentin's acting when the doll maker captures both of them and he's getting ready to preserve Laurel, and Quentin just like telling her, don't look, and he's like, you son of a bitch, I'm gonna kill you, yada yada, and just like all that raw emotion that came out of him. And it was just so darn good. You're just like, oh man, you know what I mean? Like I got goosebumps just thinking about like how good he was doing there. You know what I mean? And Sarah killing the doll maker. I wrote that note after Oliver was trying, or the Arrow was trying to tell her not to. And then obviously they make mention. You say it. I have it written down as well that Sarah's obviously running from Ra's al Ghul.
Did you spell it
which
right?
I did not spell it right. I do it later in the episode I did when I did my when I sent my notes to you, not the notes I have in front of me. But yeah,
How'd you spell it? I'm curious.
Like I'm supposed to pronounce it.
RACE.
Ra's al Ghul. No, well, RAS apostrophe A apostrophe Ghul. Just so that I can remember how to say it. Because AL, for whatever reason, they don't really pronounce it like AL. They pronounce it like Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah,
So
the way
it's
it's
just so that
really
I can
spelled,
remember.
the way it's really spelled, it just looks like Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, and it's for whatever reason it's Raish like that, like instead of Raz. But either way, I think that
yeah, we digress.
yeah, it's still an important part because that obviously this is they're setting the stage for the next 2 seasons, not even just this season, which is awesome. Anyway, next episode 4. It's called The Crucible. It introduces the mayor. It's funny, that's the exact same note I have, that he introduces the mayor as the bad guy of the week. He's been bringing M4A1s into the Glades. Oliver finally finds out that Sarah is the masked vigilante, which is crazy and really, is different for him, right?
Yeah, and all this before the freaking intro screen. Like they sounded off on this episode.
Yeah, they had to get moving. Let's see. And then they introduce, we don't know that he's Anatoly yet, but they introduce Anatoly. He meets him in the flashbacks, which is pretty cool. I think he says a really great line in the flashbacks talking about what you do say, that we see Anatoly, future leader of Bratva, him saying living is not for the weak. And then Oliver uses that in the present as well. And that was awesome. That was a line. I literally wrote that exact line because I thought it was a great line to have. Also, the Arrow and Black Canary are working together to try to catch the mayor, which they do. Yeah, Laurel, man. She's been going. First of all, she's had the wildest ride out of all of them in this entire first season, and then into the beginning of this season, right? Like she's just been.
Her character's going downhill.
Yeah, where she's she gets a DUI for driving drunk after having that date with the DA, and then she's been popping pills, which is just, it's sad because she just can't figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And then we see a guy who's getting injected. We see the mayor getting injected with a green liquid, and then it's revealed that particular guy is Sebastian Blood, who goes by the name Brother Blood. I didn't write notes about it, and you didn't either, but I did enjoy the sort of back and forth that Sebastian Blood, and during the gun drive, him and Oliver have, talking about the Crucible, and that's when I think he tells him that living is not for the weak. And I really liked sort of that back and forth they had. I thought it was really cool.
Who has the worst horror story in their past? That's all that was.
Yeah. And then obviously I already mentioned Anatoly in the flashbacks, but Oliver gets shot, and then they make him kind of repair himself, which is crazy. And then at the end of that episode, we see Sarah in boots and is in her garb, which is kind of crazy. And you're like, what the hell? Because I had forgotten that Sarah had made it to the freighter, and that's where they had re-met. Like, I had totally forgotten about that.
Yeah.
So I was like, holy shit,
I completely forgot she was even on the island to begin with.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I thought that literally after the boat went down, she went to Nanda Parbat. not that she spent time on the freighter first. So I was like, whoa, I had forgotten all about it. But, let's just keep on rolling. The next episode is League of Assassins. Now, this is probably my second favorite episode so far. Obviously, it goes into a backstory. Sarah spends most of the episode in her skivvies, right?
Pretty much.
In the flashback. She's in a bra and panties through the entire episode almost. Which I thought that was a nice touch that they redid those scenes, because obviously they recasted Sarah. The Sarah we saw in the first season is not the Sarah who what's her name? Katie Leutz or something. I don't want to say her wrong name. I apologize if that's not the right person.
Katie Cassidy.
No, Cassidy is that's Laurel. I'll look it up real quick so I can fix mine if I said it wrong. But
I'll take over the lead while you're
go for it.
Looking it up there. My notes is we see the guy dressed in the black garb who Oliver thinks is Malcolm Merlin. Oliver asked who he is, and he responds as just a warrior. So that right there is like, okay, so who are you? And then it is revealed that he is Alawa the First, who's a member of the League of Assassin. Sarah reveals that she left the League of Assassin, and Sarah reveals herself to her father, Quentin.
Yeah. Oh. Her name was Katie Leutz. I was correct, or Lotz. I may pronounce it wrong, but so I was right on there. But my God, when that moment where Sarah shows herself to Quentin was so powerful, man.
The emotional reconnection,
man. It just sends you down a spiral. Me being a dad, obviously I don't have 20-something-year-old girls, but I do have young kids, and obviously you don't need to have kids to have that emotion to understand, but. Being a dad, it changed it a little bit for me, it's crazy. I just remember, he's sitting there pointing the gun at him because he's already nervous because of Felicity telling him he needed to get the hell out, and he just didn't want to listen. Stubborn dude, right? Especially trying to hear it from Felicity.
One of my funny moments of that episode was at the end when they're fighting in the bell tower, and one of the league guys says, "Guns are a coward's weapon. What are you without your sidearm?" Quentin pulls out a pistol from his ankle and says, "I'm a spare."
Yeah, I actually have that in my notes too, saying something like that Lance was getting his ass kicked the whole time, and then he basically outsmarted the League of Assassin member. It's funny. He just constantly I'm probably going to gush over Quentin until he, dies later on in the show, which sucks. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, hashtag.
Yeah. But we learned about, obviously, that she was a Nana Parbat. We learned about her being a part of the League, that she is a member of the League of Assassins. They set the groundwork in this particular episode talking about how she's waiting for you. Not just Ra's al Ghul, but that Nissa is waiting for her. We get an intro into, we don't learn it. I think we learned his name, that it's Dr. Ivo. We had to kind of figure out who he is. This is a particular episode I was talking about earlier where Laurel thinks that Oliver's trying to make a move on her. So she's trying to have sex with him. And he's like, whoa, no. I'm just making sure you don't get attacked by the League of Assassins, And I thought that was pretty funny. And then obviously with the door being opened and then her being like, whoa, I thought I locked that. So that was pretty cool. And then at the very end of the episode, Oliver sharing a drink with Diggle, I thought was a nice touch, it being vodka that he got from Anatoly, and him telling him that eventually he'll find a reason to drink this, Yeah, and I thought that was a nice touch.
He's finally opening up to old Diggle, telling him stuff that actually happened, rather than, I said earlier in the first season, I had to make these hard choices. Now Diggle can know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah, because Diggle, even though the decisions aren't the same, he reveals that he was not always on the island. And that was the first time he truly revealed it. And obviously he needed to, because at this point, in the next episode, they're talking about he already knows about Moscow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of lead into that a little bit. And then we float into the next episode, and that is episode 6, Keep Your Enemies Closer. And I really like this episode. We learn at the very beginning, Diggle and Oliver are doing basically a mission to catch some guys, and Diggs his eyes, helps him kind of, make sure he doesn't get attacked from the back, or he's watching his 6, doing like they do in the military, right? And Diggle gets captured by Amanda Waller, who leads Argus at the time. And then she tells him that Lila has been captured, or is that she's in Moscow. and that she was tracking down a lead, and then he feels kind of sad, right, or frustrated because she's looking out, trying to find somebody to help. Or she's helping Diggle try to find Mr. Lawton, Deadshot.
Mm-hmm.
So that was awesome.
And the other thing too is Diggle had no idea that Deadshot was even in this prison.
Right. Yeah. Well, he didn't know that he was there, but he knew that Lila got into prison because of Deadshot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, like, him getting sent to the cold room, and then of course the guy across from him in the damn cold room has to be Floyd Lawton, right?
Yeah.
And it was just crazy. The raw emotion in Diggle when he's just screaming at him because he's just so pissed off that first of all, he reveals in this episode that Lila was his wife. And then now that Lila and him were married at one time. So they have this kindredship or this relationship that goes far beyond just being, tour buddies, right? In the army or special forces, I mean. And then Deadshot being able to outsmart his way to Diggle has to take him with him. I like the move to Moscow or them going to Moscow for this one. I really enjoyed that. I liked having them kind of mess around with Anatoly. I thought it was too early for the Felicity Oliver stuff. I didn't really recall it in this early in season 2.
Yeah.
Whenever
he slept with Isabel.
Yeah, and her getting upset about it, and it was I didn't really see that coming. Especially considering she knows that he can't have a normal relationship, and well, none of them can, right? They're all part of the team.
Yeah, when she
I found that to be kind of unusual.
When she says whatever happens in Moscow stays in Moscow, and then 10 minutes later she starts talking about it, and Oliver says, "So I guess we aren't forgetting about this," and she goes, "I'm still in Moscow."
Yep, it's some good stuff. That one was a little confusing. I didn't know that she was already upset about it, and then Oliver laying the ground, or Oliver saying, I just can't be with someone I truly care about because of the situation he's in. Like, for him setting that groundwork for obviously what's to come, which was really nice. And then obviously at the end of near the end of the episode anyway, Deadshot tells Diggle he doesn't miss because he thought that he accidentally shot Andy, not that he shot to kill Andy. And that was pretty powerful. Like, just that interaction, right?
That was a banger.
Yeah.
Diggle's whole vendetta is to kill Deadshot because he thinks that Deadshot missed his target and accidentally killed Andy. Diggle had no idea Andy was actually the bad guy that had the target put out on him. So it's like a whole mindfuck of emotion going through his head right there.
Yeah. And it, obviously we could say what we want about Deadshot. At the end of the day, he's a mercenary, but he does have his own set of morals. And, for him to say, hey, listen, these are the people who actually hired me. Figure something out about them, okay? And that being Hive. And, man, I tell you, it was that was like so much. And then obviously, one of the funny thing that he said was talking about honor. Because he said, why can I trust that you won't kill me? And Diggle says honor. And then he says, that's a funny thing about honor. You can't turn it on and off. And, or that's what that Deadshot said to Diggle. And that's so true because that's always been either his success or his downfall is his honor and like what he truly believes in, right? In the flashback in this particular one, they talk about finally mentioned the Mirakuru, which is going to be basically the entire season. And then Shadow trying to help resuscitate or bring back, or rather he's awake, but trying to help mend his wounds from his explosion and his his burns and stuff.
Yeah, when the boat bombed the island.
Yeah, and then for them to kind of have that weird, like I felt was a really weird interaction because he's like confessing his love for her, but at the same time she's just saying I care for you, but in a different way than say I care for Oliver. So it was really it's a weird love triangle they have going on. All right, the next episode is episode 7, State versus Queen. Man, this one starts off kind of heavy. Her trial begins. There's a lot going on here, right? The Count returns as well, and he captures Felicity. I like your little notes there.
Yeah, I can tell as you're reading them.
So,
I was gonna pull mine up too, so I had mine here. I didn't bring him up. I apologize.
I'll let y'all know why he's laughing. It says, my notes say, Mora's trial begins. The Count returns. He captures Felicity. How the fuck do people miss point blank with a fucking gun, especially automatics?
Yeah.
And that's my notes.
So I'll read my goofy little notes here. I said the Count's lame. At this point, he's just useless. And I said I'm glad he died. Probably shouldn't say that, but whatever. I said it was clever to use the flu shot. Like, I thought that was pretty cool that they used that as a way to try to infect everybody with vertigo.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned about Felicity and being put in danger and forcing Oliver to have to kill somebody. I dug the way she sort of was like, I'm so sorry that I made you do this, you know? And he was like, I would do anything to make sure you're okay. So they're really setting the stage for what's to come eventually, right?
And
I did like Diggle. Go ahead.
I was going to say the ending of this episode was pretty, like, wow.
Yeah. Well, I got two quick more before we get into that. So Diggle being put in danger was a nice touch. Where he's got, he's got vertigo. And then Moira being acquitted and then finding out why, right? Like at the end of it, we find out why. And it's Malcolm. He's back. And he finds out that Thea's his daughter, or rather, he tells or reveals that
yeah, we find this information out.
Yeah, right. And in the flashback, Oliver's being saved by Shadow and Slade. Let's see what yours say. Yeah, they escape Ivo. Yeah, basically what I was covering there. I think the next episode might be my favorite episode up to this point. Right? We get Barry Allen.
Yeah.
And I like the music change. I like that they kind of went with a totally different sort of style when he's in it. Right? What I wrote was like Flash lead in. It's kind of funny that Barry's always late, no matter what. Yep. I like how Oliver made jokes about his age. And how like he's kind of young. Your little one's also awesome when he's asking Oliver. I'm guessing you don't know how hard it is to break someone's neck. And he was like, no. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny as well. The nerd fest the nerd fest between Barry and Felicity. I thought that was a nice little joke and stuff. And then one that I wrote that I thought was really nice was Barry Allen, or more specifically Grant Gustin as Barry Allen, is damn good. And even as a non-meta, he is so smart in like knowing what's what, and like him figuring out that more than likely Oliver trained in a forest style, and that's why he wears green, and yada 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 yada. Like I was like, my goodness, you know what I mean? I was like, holy crap, it was awesome.
Yeah, they did really good introducing him, because at this point, I don't think The Flash was actually on TV yet. Or maybe it was.
No.
No, it wasn't.
Nope, not yet.
So, as a viewer, you didn't know who this geeky CSI guy was. You didn't know that was The Flash.
Right, if you have no connection to it, yeah, you have no idea. I liked Sin reaching out to Roy, trying to figure all that out. I wrote, I care very little about Malcolm Merlin. Like, I don't care. I think the guy's pretty good, the guy who plays Malcolm Merlin, but I just don't care.
What, are you over it already?
Over Merlin, yeah. Like
you had your season. Get out of here.
Yeah. I think that he's not really adding much right now. Now, I do like that he totes this line between good guy, bad guy, but he's not really. But he has a reason for being one or the other, right? So I kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah, he does that throughout his whole career on the show, though. Like, you don't ever know if he is the good guy or if he is the bad guy, and it never changes. So you're kind of like, every time you see him, you're like, which version are you?
Right. You wrote that Felicity looks really, really good in her pink dress.
Mm-hmm.
But I wrote that I fucking hated her hair. Like, I thought her hair was terrible. With the like high hair, the high pullback hair, I thought that was some awful hairstyle choice. But I actually thought Thea looked beautiful in this particular shot at the party, which is kind of crazy considering I don't really find her very attractive, but I thought it really worked in that moment. Again, you wrote about it, I wrote about it. Was the Moira Isabella sort of like
bitch off?
You wrote cat-like bitchiness towards each other. And it's kind of funny. And I like that they were like duking it out with words and stuff. I thought it was a pretty cool little a way of doing that. Oliver getting his ass kicked by the guy with that's on the Mirakuru. And then I got one of the little funny one I wrote here was Moira pulling out Ra's al Ghul. I said badass. Like she was like, "Listen, boy, you better stop," And I thought that was really cool.
I like how
What-
Roy says that he doesn't need the arrow anymore because he's on the Mirakuru or whatever.
Yep.
And Arrow shoots him in the knee.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that I don't know. Is he was training Roy at this point, right? Or not just yet. So I thought that was really nice. It's just one of the things where he doesn't know how to control his anger. So it's not quite.
No, he wasn't training him at this point, but he
not
was
yet. Okay.
He was still working for him, but
working with him. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Flashbacks. Oh, well, I did write one more time. Barry is always late because that's the only reason he was able to save Oliver, right? Because he was late and he missed his train. Used rat poison, right? To save it. Was it Oliver, right? That he saved?
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool to see like the brilliance of Barry Allen, right? And then in the flashback, they get to the sub, they inject Slade with the Mirakuru, and we assume he's dead. That you wrote he dies. So we just assume that he's dead. That was the intention, was that we assume he's dead.
Because they harped it up about how you have to have a sedative in order for the Mirakuru to be stable. They didn't have the sedative. And then Slade bleeds through his eyeballs, and we think that he's dead. Obviously, we know he's not, but as the viewer, we think that he died.
Yeah, and I mean, and it was a pretty heavy moment, like just seeing that. I mean, we obviously know he's not dead because I think we've already seen him in one of these episodes. So it was it still was like still heavy to see how they reacted to it. The next episode is episode 9, which is 3 Ghosts. This is a pretty good storytelling here. Oliver starts hallucinating, which could possibly be because of the rat poisoning. Barry did say that could be a side effect, which I thought was pretty cool. I like Barry I almost didn't want Barry to leave. Like I felt like he became a part of the team, you know what I'm saying? And like he just really enjoyed him being there. I thought it was awesome. The 3 ghosts that Oliver sees is Shadow, and then he sees Slade, and then he finishes by seeing Tommy. And
he gets his ass whooped by Slade.
Yeah, he certainly does. Slade kicks his ass in his own area too, like in his own little what's it called?
His bunker.
His bunker. Yeah. I wrote that I love Barry standing up to Oliver after he kind of helped him save him. Oh, because he was pissed off that Barry found out who he really was. There was a line in there. I can't remember if it was Barry or I think it might have been Felicity, and she said, "Never meet your heroes." And I really liked that line because he's not who you thought he was, I guess, or his inability is sometimes different between the two. The Cyrus Gold being Solomon Grundy, and the Solomon Grundy died on a Monday or whatever. I liked that little twist where they had that little hymn or that little story about that they read. So I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't actually know the connection of Cyrus Gold and Solomon Grundy being the same person. Until I looked it up. I wrote fucking Laurel messing with all these dudes, ADA and now aldermen.
She hoeing around.
She's just getting around, ain't she? Hey, listen, I'm all for it. You do whatever makes you happy. I just thought it was kind of funny because when she's first introduced, she's painted as this like
victim.
Yeah, and like she's something that is like she's precious in a lot of ways.
Yeah, a one-man gal.
Yeah, and she's been popping all around.
Hitting the bottle and taking pills and sleeping around. It's like complete 180.
Yeah, her whole story this time, I just feel so bad for her. Quentin, man, gosh. That was like the hardest part for me was Quentin getting his ass kicked and Oliver putting him there, which makes me even, just pisses me off that Oliver was like too weak. He's just going to put everybody else. And then Quentin's former partner ends up dying because of it. And then just like the survivor's guilt and everything that he feels from it, I was like so just torn apart because of it. This is when Slade is actually truly introduced and that brother Blood is working with him. And Barry Allen gives Oliver the mask. Those are my last little bit of notes. What you got over there?
It's a big moment because if I remember right, I don't think we still see Slade's face when he's introduced. I'm pretty sure.
Think we fully. I think they pan to his face.
I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was just the voice that we heard.
maybe so.
But me and you being fans and how much we love Deathstroke, we're like, oh, this is him. This is it. This is it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
when
I
Slade
think
announced
that,
he was going to destroy Oliver and his friends and loved ones, you're like, ah, shit. Here we go.
Yeah, that he wants to take away everything that he loves. I was like, my goodness. And it makes it, I feel like they didn't do a great job connecting all the dots, and maybe I just don't remember everything.
It's because you have to piece the flashbacks together, and
Yeah.
if you haven't been paying attention to the flashbacks, you get severely lost. And it's very easy to do because they're like 2/3 of the main show and then 1/3 of the flashbacks, and they expect you to retain everything in the flashbacks, and it's hard to do.
The crazy thing about this particular flashback in this episode is I don't feel like he made a choice. Like I mean, you wrote that he kneels in front of Sarah, but that's because that's what they tell us to do. But I never really felt like he made a choice.
Right.
Or at least maybe the camera angles didn't do a great job of showing who he picked. Like I guess they didn't do a great job in that in terms of letting me know that Oliver picked Sarah.
Yeah, the way I intended it was he just fell begging him not to kill either one of them, and he happened to favor Sarah's side, and then Ivo was like, well, I guess you made your choice.
Tied, right?
Yeah.
Like he was handcuffed or whatever. So
he probably tripped.
I feel like that the way that whole setup was terrible. And then for Sarah to be like, oh well, it doesn't matter what you did, yada yada yada, let's lie to Slade. That was weird too, because I mean I get it because of the Mirakuru, she didn't want him to go off, but that whole thing was just weird to me. I didn't feel like it was properly done. But moving on, before we move on, Shadow does die. He shoots Shadow, and then Slade comes back and helps him get out of it, which is pretty crazy. But moving on, like I said, to the next episode, which is episode 10, Blast Radius. I'll let you go if you don't mind, if you want to take lead on this one.
All right. On mine is Oliver supports Blood for mayor, which is kind of weird. And then Oliver wants Felicity to stop thinking of Barry and focus more on her job. Like that whole uneasy feeling between Oliver and Felicity. You kind of think that maybe there's something there. Like the show does a very good job at kind of thinking that Felicity has a crush on Oliver, but Oliver does not. And then when we see this part, it's almost like, well, does Oliver have a crush on Felicity? Like maybe. We don't know yet. Is there something brewing? Laurel thinks that something's off about Blood, while everyone else thinks that he's a saint and just the overall good guy. But Laurel has this suspicion that he's not who he says he is. Roy saves Moira from the light rail, and Thea realizes something is up with Roy, because Thea does not know that Roy has been injected with the Mirakuru, and she also sees that his arm was impaled by the glass that fell from that light rail in the club whenever he saved Moira, because he healed so fast.
I just got a couple other really small notes. That this is like the first time Quentin he's not really on. I wrote basically first time Quentin is off base on someone, and that someone is Blood. Like he totally misreads Blood, and he's never really done that, which is what's crazy. Like he's always been that guy you can kind of trust that he's going to point you in the right direction. And obviously they did it for misdirection. That was the point, but it was pretty crazy for him to do that. And then Laurel finding out that Maya Resnick is Blood's mother, and then him going and basically killing his mother was fucking crazy. Well, he killed his mother too of a heart attack, but finding out that he killed his father first, is pretty crazy. Flashback. All I particularly wrote was that Shadow was buried next to Robert and her dad, which I cannot Yao Fei, which I thought was a pretty nice touch. And then obviously Slade is planning something.
And Slade hands Oliver the green hood, which belonged to Alpha Faye.
Yeah, which I thought was pretty nice. And he said he didn't deserve it, so I thought that was pretty cool for him to still do it. We didn't mention it, but the villain of the week was called Shrapnel. Whatever. I mean, it wasn't really that big of a deal. Him in particular. Episode 11 is called Blind Spot. You want to take the lead on this one too?
Yeah, on my notes here, it says, Laurel says you're late, and then Arrow said he had to circle around to make sure there wasn't a SWAT team around. That was kind of a funny moment, but also a serious moment, because I don't think either one of us wrote about that in the previous episode. Roy's done turned into a badass because he's been injected with the Mirakuru, but he doesn't know when to stop. Just like Slade Wilson in the flashbacks. I guess to be the bloodthirst, right? That we haven't been introduced to yet, but that's what it's technically called. Laurel gets arrested for her pills, about time, and then Blood captures Laurel.
So,
see, and here in my notes, I even said we see the first appearance of Slade in the Deathstroke garb, who sends Blood a message.
Yep. So I got a couple quick notes. This is where Blood kills his mother. He actually kills her in episode 11. She dies of a heart attack, but he's wearing his mask and he's freaking her out. So it hadn't happened just yet. The ADA basically letting her go, which I thought was kind of crazy. Refusing to help out Laurel in any way. No, I'm sorry. ADA refusing to help Laurel with Blood, and then that's why she reached out to Arrow, and they made that comment you mentioned. Finding out that Slade is the one that stole that file, so that it's not in there about him killing his father. Roy struggling with the effects of Mirakuru. I felt like Sebastian Blood's just a ripoff of Scarecrow. I just don't feel like he's anything fancy. Blood putting Officer Daly as the fall guy. Laurel being fired by the ADA. And then in giant, bold, and all capital letters, I wrote Deathstroke with an exclamation point, which is about as good as it gets. Arrow decides to help Roy and try to train him. And then in the flashback, all that was kind of weird, but Sarah makes her choice. That's basically all that really matters. Sarah makes her choice, and she decides to join up with Team Arrow in the back.
All I wrote was Ivo trying to sweet talk Sarah. Not much going on in the flashbacks.
And then he calls her a bitch or something because she decides not to. Oh, I'm going to bury you out there, whatever.
Yeah, he's all bipolar.
Yeah. Next episode's Tremors. I'll let you take the lead again.
All right. It says, we see Michael J. White, badass, in prison, who gets his Wolverine claws back, breaks into Merlin's house to steal the prototype earthquake machine that we saw from season 1. Roy is losing his mind to the Mirakuru. The rage is too much for him to get a hold of. Oliver will not let the same thing happen to Roy that happened to Slade. So, he has that experience with the Mirakuru, and that's probably why he took on helping Roy so much. Oliver reveals himself to Roy to get him to stop beating Bronze Tiger, or Michael J. White, to death. So that was a pretty big moment in the episode. Once again, Arrow has revealed himself again to somebody else.
Yep.
Waller approaches Bronze Tiger in prison to ask him to join the unit, or squad, and I wrote a nod to the Suicide Squad. Yep. And Sarah reveals herself to a drunken Laurel.
Oh, gosh.
Like when she was on the couch, like all loopy and stuff, and we just see like fuzzy pictures of Sarah.
Yep. So I got a couple small little notes. Moira being asked to run against Blood, which is crazy, just all things considered. Joanna, her former CNRI partner, couldn't hire her to her new firm because of her being potentially disbarred from practicing law. Laurel. Quentin taking Laurel to an AA meeting, which I thought was crazy considering he was putting it up like they were going out to dinner. Always good to have Walter, him trying to convince Moira to run for mayor. Roy gets to meet the team at the end of the episode. And then in the flashback, basically they find Slade, and he's trying to use the missile launcher from that Fires had, and and Oliver, like you said, finally breaks through to Slade and wants to capture the freighter to go home.
Something I realized about our notes.
What's that?
I write about all the action scenes, and you write about all the dramatic scenes.
Well, that's a great compliment because we tend to not miss anything between the two of us, or at least not much. The next episode is episode 13, Heir to the Demon, and I will let you once again take lead on this one.
Oh, mine is we see this first glimpse of Nyssa Al Ghul, or Nyssa Ratko, as said in the show when she's in the airport. Myra's going to run for mayor against Blood. Nyssa meets with Sarah, and she Frenches her. And it says, "What the fuck? I'm confused and aroused." And then Felicity done figured out that Moira is a cheating ass hoe. Like she done figured out that Moira is or Malcolm is Thea's father. Funny moment in the show. Quentin says, "Don't they teach you about right crosses in Assassin's School?" And then I have another note here that says, "How was Laurel clean from drugs when she was clearly using them?" That one must have went over my head somewhere, because in the episode previous she got busted for pills but they run a drug test on her and she was clean, even though she'd been using pills for the past 6 episodes or something like that.
Yep.
So that one went above my head. I didn't figure that one out. The only thing that they found in her system was the snake poison in her blood. Oliver understands how badass Ra's al Ghul is. Like when, I forgot who he was talking to. I think it was Diggle maybe. And he mentions that name, and even Oliver says that he's heard stories about him. So his name obviously carries a lot of weight behind it.
Yep.
And then I wrote Oliver and Sarah about to be fucking. Still confused.
Yeah, this episode's kind of crazy. Nyssa is a great character, and I really enjoyed a lot of her introduction.
And she's hot.
Yeah, and they have such a weird dichotomy because Oliver ends up. Obviously, that's a different story. Well, I'm not going to mention it because it's next season. But Oliver and her have continued crossing paths later on. But apparently, and then her and Sarah have this weird thing going that we don't really know about yet. Yeah, they're definitely, I guess, continuing to push it forward, right? I think that this is a good starting and ending point for a lot of things, right? So it definitely does a good job pushing the whole story forward.
Yeah.
And the next episode is episode 14, Time of Death. And Bud, I'll let you take it away.
All right, on mine it says Robert Nepper, who was on Prison Break, Transporter 3, and Heroes. Pretty good actor. He led a bank robbery. He was the leader of the group. He was also the Felicity of the group because he was the man behind the keyboard. And I wrote my notes, Old Teabag, because that's who he played on Prison Break. His official title is called the Clock King. In the show, he's a better hacker than Felicity because he blew up the bunker's whole computer system. Like literally blew it up. And at the end of that show, it kind of gets flipped around where Felicity blows up his phone with the same hack that he did, and Felicity gets shot. She has a scar now because in the beginning of the episode, Laurel and Oliver were going back and forth talking about where they got all their scars and all this stuff, and Felicity come in and mentioned that she had a wisdom tooth pulled or something. Just trying to be part of the conversation, but old Felicity just didn't have that fighting background that those two did.
You said Laurel, but I think you meant Sarah.
Yeah, I did. I apologize.
Okay. I was making sure.
Laurel makes up with Sarah and attends the group meeting that Lance tried to get her to go to in the previous episode. And then in all caps, I got Oliver meets Slade again in Moira's house. The most OP moment in the show. Because this was the face-to-face between Oliver and Slade since the island.
Yeah.
I mean, bruh. Words.
Yeah.
What do you think's going on through his head? Because Oliver thinks that he's dead.
Yep.
And he's over here talking to this guy, and he shakes his hand, and like he don't miss a beat. Like he kind of gets taken off guard. You can see it in his eyes. But what is running through Oliver's head?
God, man. It's so funny that, well, first of all, I do want to say that old Teabag does a great job as the Clock King.
Yes, he
I'll
does.
just get into that real quick before we go back all about Slade and I bet Oliver's just like fucking confused. But you know what? They did a great job. When they already foreshadowed this whole thought process because Oliver Deadshot in the eye, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't die. So they've already sort of foretold that obviously a shot in the eye is not going to kill somebody. So when he taught him that, or when I think he was talking to Diggle and he asked him about Slade and he said, I had to put an arrow in him or arrow in his eye or something to that effect. I think they were kind of telling that, obviously he's not dead. We already knew that, of course, as a viewer, that we know that he hasn't died yet. But I thought that was because
even in the flashbacks, he's still alive.
Yeah. Because that particular fight scene that happens in the flashbacks hasn't quite happened yet. Because they're going to have a hand-to-hand go to combat.
Yeah, they're going to keep building up until they actually fight.
Oh, yeah, they fight in both. That's what's the best part, right? So, Manu Bennett, who plays Slade / Deathstroke, is an awesome actor. And unfortunately, I read the reason he kind of got written off after this is I guess he was supposed to become like a team member, but only be used sparingly, and he didn't like where they were pushing him. So that's one of the reasons after the end of this season he's not really in it until like season 6 or something when they go rescue him from the bunker on Lian Yu or 7, whatever.
Yeah,
with Oliver and his boy.
when they make
But
when they turn the flashbacks into the main story.
Yeah. So what about that flashback?
I wrote down the pilot that was driving. Oh my goodness. I need to go to sleep. The pilot was flying, because that's what planes do. They fly,
Yep.
they don't drive. When he was flying across the island and the missile machine shot down the plane, the pilot was a father of somebody that we know. And he hands Sarah a picture and says, "Please take care of my daughter." And the little girl in that picture is Sin, or Roy's friend, or Black Canary's friend, when she turns back to town.
Yeah.
So now we kind of get that whole coming together of why Sarah and Sin are kind of quote unquote sisters.
Yeah. Oh man. I think they do a great job of like making
Looping
everything
back.
matter. Yeah. But it matters, right? Like they're looping back to it. But they're showing like how Sarah got put on this path, right?
Mhm.
But it all ties in. And I think it's just a really, I like when the flashbacks are done well. There's sometimes where they slow it down because they don't want to blow their load too early or whatever. But they do a great job when it works. And that in this particular case is one time where it really worked, where Sarah took that to heart and she did everything she could to really help, obviously still today protect Sin, right? All right, we've reached, a little bit more than halfway. We're kind of in the home stretch. The next episode is episode 15, The Promise. This one's kind of starts to finally set the stage of what's to come, right?
Yeah, it's where we get to see Slade coming back and laying down the groundwork of why he's here.
What balls, right? What balls it took to just literally just walk into his parents' house and hey, show me around, and you make a sizable donation to his mother's campaign and stuff.
Yeah.
And just have no care in the world, right?
Yeah, and the fact that Oliver has to play along with it too.
Yeah, because nobody knows at this point that. Well, first of all, nobody knows that Slade was alive except for his minions, and then, of course, Oliver just now finds out for sure that Slade is alive, and now, yeah, he has to kind of play along because he doesn't want his family to know what happened or how they know each other, and it's a very very tense moment. Like you wrote in the notes about him trying to stab Wilson and Wilson catching him and saying, "Not yet, kid," as he says. Uh,
Yeah.
I've yet to meet the rest of your family. Man, it was sort of overwhelming. I can only imagine if you were in Oliver's shoes, how you'd feel, and to be so helpless. One little cool little tidbit they did was right after that, when Thea walks in, Oliver steps on the blade to sort of like hide it as if nothing's going wrong. And I thought that was a nice little touch. Show that Oliver's trying to preserve his sister's innocence and not try to get her involved. And I thought that was pretty cool. I guess after that, she made a joke that Oliver butt dialed her, right? And then Sarah noticed that the voice was Slade, and she was 100% sure. He obviously has a pretty strong Australian accent. I'm not exactly sure where Manu Bennett is from, but that's what he plays anyway for Slade. And Sarah saying that she realizes that was definitely Wilson's voice. And they were like, isn't he dead? And she's like, well, listen, because all three of them have come back from the dead, right?
Yeah.
And they all just kind of move into position, which I thought was pretty cool. Sarah, and then having Diggle have I guess like a 50 cal, maybe a pretty big sniper rifle, waiting to try to take out Slade. And then him getting knocked out by one of his minions was a nice little touch to prove that he's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like always outsmarting him, so to speak, right?
A badass.
Yeah, I mean, truly. It's he's like, listen, everything. What does he say? Oh, one of your associates, a Mr. Diggle. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then Slade realizing that Roy is also has the Mirakuru from their firm handshake.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was a nice little foreshadowing and some good storytelling without having to say or do much, which I thought was pretty cool. And then obviously Slade is bugging the house, and they show that at the end, that he's bugging the house with cameras.
so that he can keep tabs on it. Then we find out how Slade is staying ahead, right? In the flashbacks, there's a lot of cool stuff that happened in this one where Oliver's finally kind of, I guess, taken on that training.
Yeah, the montage sequence.
Yeah, with him running through the beach and stuff.
Yeah,
and then
all the movies have them.
Yeah. Him, I guess he was practicing the whole thing, which was pretty cool. The showing of the rum, which I thought was a nice touch. Obviously, they do a great job of kind of showing the current and then how it relates in the past.
Putting the little tidbits together. Yeah.
Yep. Slade with the Deathstroke mask, and then mentioning that they're now brothers, which I thought was pretty cool. Where it all starts to go downhill, at least in the flashbacks, where Oliver had the opportunity to kill Ivo, and instead he allows him to beg for mercy, just like Sarah told him not to. And his hesitation on wanting to kill somebody is the reason Slade heard the truth that Oliver saved Sarah instead of Shadow. And then Slade goes into absolute badass mode, right?
Mm-hmm. He roids out.
Yeah, yeah. He says, "I'm now the captain." The dude takes shots at him, right? And he just goes up and like smushes his head. I was like, "Holy crap!" And then he, finishes it off by telling Slade that you can't die until you have suffered as badly as I have.
Which I just like to interject here. They didn't set up the whole thing between Slade and Shadow very well.
No, that was my point that I was going to make, is that
like
they didn't do a very good job.
Yeah, this dude is over here like he killed the love of his life, and we didn't get any kind of backstory.
There was none.
Yeah,
that's a funny thing. That's why I thought that, obviously we're only on episode 15. We've watched through the rest of the series. We're just kind of talking about it now, but that was one of the things that got frustrating as it went on. Is like, literally, this is all about a woman and how Oliver chose to save a different woman instead of Shadow, even though Shadow basically said it was okay. So it was I don't know. I struggle with that one altogether because I just felt like it didn't do a good enough job kind of explaining why Slade would, first of all, save himself from the freighter, make all of this money just to destroy one person. It was, I don't know.
Yeah,
it was a little bit much.
The whole arc was awesome just because we love Deathstroke, but the premise behind it was just kind of corny.
Yeah, very much so.
At least the way they set it up was.
Yeah. I guess it would be better if he had more sort of I guess more reason to be mad, but I guess that's why they tried to add Shadow later on. Well, she was sort of the one pushing, right?
Well, all they had to do was like, how when it was Oliver and Shadow starting to develop that relationship, they could have just made it Shadow and Slade, and it would have had much more greater impact in my mind.
Yeah. If those two had been sort of together, like you said, and then he chose Sarah over Shadow, I think part of the vindictiveness, I guess, for Slade is that Oliver had her and he chose somebody else and not her, I guess, is one of the reasons that he gets so frustrated. I don't know.
Well, and then the other thing is, like we talked about earlier, is like he didn't even really make a choice. He just kind of fell in front of Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, his hands are tied. I thought it was stupid. I'm glad Ivo, that's coming, but yeah, very, very frustrating that, he didn't really make a choice. His goal was he didn't want to have to choose, and it was terrible. Moving on, episode 16 is called Suicide Squad. This is sort of a departure from what was kind of going on, just a smidge anyway.
Yeah, I hate when they do this shit.
Yeah, this is like they were trying to fill in some episodes that they had 23 and they didn't know what to do, so they're like, let's throw this one in.
Yeah, the next 2 episodes are like this, and I hate it.
Yeah, but so the thing is I do enjoy, if it wasn't in, I guess if we didn't just have episode 15, this wouldn't be that big of a deal. But you just had introduction of Slade, and you just kind of like, well, not the introduction, but like the meeting, the first like real meeting between Slade and Oliver, and then now we're like, let's take a 2-week break, and it's like, what the hell, guys? We were, it was just getting good,
They just straight up blue balled us.
Yep, and that's not to say that this episode's not good, because I actually really enjoyed this episode.
You can have it.
So if this episode had aired, like I said, a few episodes before this, I think you may view it a little bit different, at least a little bit, but I don't think the placement was great. I enjoy Deadshot. I don't really, Shrapnel, whatever. I enjoy Bronze Tiger, and I think that both of them kind of getting their small redemption story was pretty cool. showing that there's shades of gray. It's not just bad guy and good guy, and that they sort of reside somewhere in the middle. I thought that was really nice. Oliver kind of losing his mind with the Bratva was crazy. Him basically selling out. Listen, I don't care about the Bratva. I need you to find Slade Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And then they give him an address, and then he shows up, and then that guy, the gentleman from the Bratva, is just sitting in that chair, which I thought was wild with the arrow in his eye.
Just goes to show you more of how a badass that Slade is.
Yeah. That he's just a little bit ahead. And then obviously we're finally getting some of the, like you said, the brewing with the arrow and the Deathstroke. I did enjoy the little Harley Quinn cameo, which I thought was pretty funny. What did Shane say that they introduced it in the that she got introduced in the TV series first, right? And then made it to the comics?
Yeah, she was introduced in the animated series,
which I think is kind of crazy. And then she becomes basically she's in like one of those top 5 characters when you think about Batman now, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's wise because she was so popular with the audience in the cartoon that they wrote her into the comics because of her popularity.
Yeah, I think that's insane. I'm sure it's happened more than just that one time, but not to the same extent, right?
I'm not really 100% on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying in general, I would imagine it happens sometimes. We got the first official title of Deathstroke being called that. And Amanda Waller sort of like you wrote in your notes that she's kind of, at least fearful of what Slade has been able to do. And she's saying he's been all over the place. And I thought that was pretty crazy. Just sort of talking about, even she's a little nervous. And I think it was crazy for Oliver to even reach out to Amanda Waller, right? He's pulling every string he has available to try to get ahead, right?
Yeah. And for someone like Oliver to have the leader of Argus, on speed dial, that should show you what kind of connections that he has.
Yes. And it continues to, obviously, well, we'll get to it, but the backstory kind of moves to something else after this. So it's pretty cool. Moving on to the next episode is Birds of Prey. Man, I'll be honest, this might be my like you said, this might be my least favorite episode. And you basically kind of wrapped it up in your small summary here.
Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and read y'all my notes for this episode. Huntress returns to kill her father, who was arrested, Frank Bertinelli. This episode was boring for an action episode. I dislike the Huntress. This shit is irrelevant. I want fucking Deathstroke.
And that basically sums up my feelings. Now, there are a couple good things that do happen in this episode that are not related to, well, she had to happen for it to happen. Laurel being used as a pawn with the ADA, and then him being fired. And then we get Laurel badassing out, right? Like she basically says, well, no, you're going to hire me back and I'm going to work here. You're just going to have to deal with it, sort of thing. And I thought that was I think it was really cool to see Laurel kind of finally find who she is a little bit, right? And kind of push into this is what I do.
Yeah, there's a lot better than how they were building her up. It's just like a pill pusher and an alcoholic.
Yeah, it finally gave her some direction. And I think that in a lot of ways, I guess she finally was like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like she had some balls, I guess.
Yeah, she wasn't.
I don't know what else to say.
She wasn't the victim anymore. And I hate when people write that into characters. Because at the start of Arrow, Laurel was still a badass, in her own way, being an attorney. She was a badass attorney. And then,
right.
This season, they just made her worthless and as a victim. Everything's not her fault. She's lost too much. I hate when they do that shit. Yeah,
me too. I don't know if I'll be honest. I'm not very good at remembering, but it had to have been before this. When did Sarah and them have their dinner? Was that in this episode or the episode? Yeah, it had to be this episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Sarah brings Oliver to dinner when they go to, was that a few episodes before when Sarah goes to see Laurel and they have dinner with Quentin and Dinah, the mom, and Sarah brings Oliver with her.
Yeah.
So that episode kind of, it doesn't really relate fully, but it's the complete opposite of what happens in this one, right? Where she's always like, oh, I'm the victim. I hate everybody, pushing everybody away. This is all crap. I'm a terrible person, yada, yada, yada. And then you get this Laurel where it's like, I'm finally in control. And she's saying, I'm going to take back my life. I'm not going to be a victim. And I think that was a huge step for her. If nothing else, that's what this episode accomplished. And despite the Huntress and Helena and all this, I think that was it wasn't worth it because I would have rather skipped the whole episode altogether. But At least we gained something from it. And that's about all we got to say about that one. We're going to go ahead and move on to episode 18. I didn't even tell the name. The name of that episode was Birds of Prey, whatever. Episode 18 is Deathstroke. You wrote hashtag yeah boy.
Yes, sir.
About time, It was weird to have sort of, like you said, those two little breaks, and then we jump right back into it. I will say this episode starts off pretty crazy with Oliver telling Roy, hey, you have got to break up with Thea, push her away, yada, yada, yada. And then to do that, what he does is he, makes out with a girl because Thea's like, no, I'm going to stay around, yada, yada, yada. And then that's what pushes Slade to find a way to kidnap Thea. So that allowed Slade to kidnap Thea. And it was all because Oliver told Roy to kind of push her away. And I think that's very, obviously the whole point is to set up the sort of tension between the team. Obviously it did a great job. Slade kidnapping Thea and then showing a ransom video, which he didn't ask for anything, but having sort of her on the screen during the debate between Moira and Sebastian Blood, I thought was a pretty cool touch. But a lot of it's still kind of crazy. Oliver granting Isabel temporary CEO of Queen Consolidated.
You skipped over one thing in my note here, and I have to throw that in there.
I was going to come back to it, but yeah.
Yeah, when Roy punches Slade, and it don't even phase him. Even though Roy is on the Mirakuru at this point, too.
Yeah. I think that's kind of crazy that I think most of it was Slade was kind of showing, listen, man, you don't understand what I can do.
Yeah, it's like that whole, look, kid, I've been on Mirakuru for 5 years. You've been on it for 5 minutes. Sit down.
Yep. Yeah, he was basically showing that there's a difference between a controlled rage and an uncontrolled rage. And Roy was an uncontrolled rage, and Slade kind of has everything. There's nothing about Slade that, even throughout the entire series or the entire season, until the very end, he never really loses his composure, which I think is really cool because it shows that he's in control of the Mirakuru, despite obviously later in the season, kind of where he starts to lose a little bit. But yeah, it's wild. Roy just trying to give him everything he's got, and he just like, whatever. I think he spits a little bit of blood maybe, but he's like, whatever. It's very crazy. Then you got, obviously, like I mentioned, with Isabel getting temporary CEO of Queen Consolidated and Oliver signing it over to her. I thought it was very funny that he just signed it on a random piece of paper and was like, here you go. And it made, and like, everybody's like, okay, sure.
Yeah. Like just sign this shit over on a napkin.
Yeah, basically, I was like, this is fucking ridiculous. I didn't get that part. I mean, I get the point, but I don't get the whole, this is how we do it. You thought she would have had a damn piece of paper that Oliver could have signed that would have granted her CEO, but I guess that may have been too, what's the word I'm looking for? Like too.
Well, Oliver was in a rush is why he did it.
No, I know, but I said if she should have already had this thought process. She was pushing him this way on purpose. Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't have had a piece of paper that said, here, you can grant me temporary CEO by signing this piece of paper. Maybe it would have seemed too like forward, and it wouldn't have allowed that opportunity, I guess, but that would have made total sense to me because you should have worked papers anytime. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. No one would have taken a napkin shot of anything to mean anything. Anybody could have written that,
Yeah.
So I don't know. Have we found out yet that we know that Isabel's working with Slade?
Yes.
We do know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was something where, at least at first, I know we didn't know that. And then for that to be sort of shown was pretty cool because it kind of give her a reason. Obviously, they kind of, I don't know, through this one, I think they talk about it, right?
Yeah, we just thought Isabel is just a bitch, but now we know why.
Is it in this episode we learned some of the reasoning why? Or is that the next?
Reasoning for what?
Why she's doing, besides being with Slade, but the reasoning why.
Yeah, the reason why is to replicate Slade's blood to mass produce it.
Well, because they need the applied science division for it. Right. That's why they want CEO. That's why they want Queen Consolidated. I do enjoy the hyped up version of Slade's suit with his black and orange.
Yeah, it is so cool.
Yeah, him walking out in front of that bus, and then that one dude walks out, and he's like, "You better stand down, or I'm gonna shoot." And Slade just kind of. It's like, okay, buddy. And then throws his sword. He's like, "Huh." It's like, dude, you guys are fucking crazy.
He's a total badass, man.
Yeah, like that was where you kind of got that first little bit of sort of what he's doing, right? And like you said, he's always a step ahead because Oliver was going to try to find Slade, and Slade's not there. And neither is Thea. He had already released Thea by that point. That just shows kind of how far behind he is. And now he's already kidnapping a bunch of recruits a bunch of prisoners to take the Mirakuru. And I think that's pretty crazy. And then obviously Thea learns that Malcolm is her father and that Slade told her that. And like, that's crazy. Well, I think her reaction probably is more annoying than sort of like the truth. Like,
yeah, she's a little wonky with acting.
Yeah, I mean, and that may have been just the direction she was given, but like how far she took it was crazy considering in the next episode, I think it is, we learn about, or is it the end of this one? It's at the end of this one when Slade tells Laurel that Oliver is the Arrow, and then how she takes that is two totally different things. You think that Laurel would have overreacted similar to how Thea does, and Thea would have still been upset, but maybe not to the same extent. Like she should have known there was some lies going on still, you know?
I guess the other thing too is Malcolm being Thea's father is probably a little more heart-wrenching than Oliver being the Arrow.
Well, I guess my point is that doesn't change. Like I've never understood that part because it doesn't change how you were raised, right? Like if you found out that, or if I found out that my dad wasn't my real dad, it doesn't change like my last 30 plus years, right? That doesn't change anything that's happened. It just proves that there was a person in my life who wanted to be there and a person who wasn't in my life that didn't want to be there.
So you mean you don't just instantly hate your dad that you know now and love the one that you just found out is your real dad?
Right. Yeah. I don't know.
Who thinks that
thing
way?
I didn't understand. Yeah. I just never understood this, I guess. For me personally. Now, obviously I've never found out that my dad isn't my real dad. He is my real dad, but I'm just saying.
As far as you know.
Yeah, I guess as far as I know. But had I found that he wasn't, I don't think that, like I said, that wouldn't have changed how I was raised, right? So I guess I just struggle with it. It didn't seem to make as much of a difference to me. Now, I guess dealing with the fact that Malcolm tried to commit like mass murder, I guess that would be something.
Yeah, that probably didn't help.
But that wouldn't, I guess, but why take that out on Oliver, I guess? It didn't seem like something that really truly mattered, I guess. I don't know. And then we obviously see that Roy's kind of disappearing, kind of ran off, which will tie back in later. Episode 19, The Man Under the Hood. I'll let you take a little bit of lead on this one.
Alrighty. This one starts out pretty good. The whole team of Arrow are planning charges in the Queen Consolidated Applied Sciences building because they're trying to, Slade is trying to take the centrifuge so he can spread his blood around and make his army, and they decide to blow up the building. Laurel's starting to question what Slade told her, like piecing together, like she's out there in her office, like looking at all like the vigilante poster and linking in all the crimes that he's done and all that stuff.
Yeah, just to interject here real quick. Quentin, he continues his streak of amazing acting. It was in the previous episode, I think, where he takes, or maybe it's the beginning of this one, where he takes the fall because he refuses to tell who the Arrow is. And he's in jail for that because he refuses to say who the Arrow is or who the woman in the black is. And you said #GoodPops. And I agree. I think that Quentin has proven to be, over the course of these first two seasons, probably like the most consistent and best character in the entire show. I can't really put it into words how strongly I feel, especially in his shoes, where he's like, listen, and he tells Laurel in this episode, like, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically tells her, I don't know who the Arrow is, and I don't care. I need the Arrow to do things for the city that I can't. And it's better for me to not know that he has loved ones and that he has family. And he goes, imagine what it's like for him to have to go home every night or to keep all these secrets and to have to do all these things. And what he loses or what he's losing because of this. And like, that's the first time I think anyone has sort of explained that Oliver is making such a major sacrifice for this entire city, and every single person is coming at him in different ways of not wanting him to do it. Or, the police chief and all of them not wanting any vigilantes, or all the villains out there who are trying to kill him. And then even his family who are like, why are you doing this? And then it's just, I guess that was just great to have Quentin, who's always sort of the backbone of the show, kind of talk about all that, right? It was a great piece of business just having Quentin kind of talking to Laurel. And then obviously the way that ended.
Well, it's also more colorful based on the fact that, in season 1, Quentin had such a, aggressive personality towards capturing the vigilante. And now he's a lot more lax and understanding. And he still doesn't know that the Arrow is Oliver at this point. He's just come to terms with the fact that he's not this guy that he thought he was. Like, he actually cares about Starling City as well as Quentin does.
Yeah, he's starting to understand that police work doesn't always get the job done in this certain situations. You know, that's one thing that I think that Quentin does a great job. Like I said, just sort of giving that what's what I'm looking for. Like I said, just giving that grounded nature. And like you said, he's evolved as a character. In season 1, he just said police work is how things are done, not you know, taking crime into your own hands sort of thing. Or not crime, taking like what's the word I'm looking for, bud? Taking like
I don't know what you're looking for.
Me neither. We're gonna skip over it. I think Quentin does a great job of the only thing that he changed from season 1 to season 2 was he didn't think that you should solve problems, you know, on your own. You should be doing it based on, you know, the justice system, and it all works out in the end, and yada yada yada. And then him sort of realizing there are shades of gray, that you can't always do it that way. And I thought that was great for him. And to be honest with you, I could talk about Quentin all day long because I think he might be the best character in the entire series until he meets his untimely demise, of course. Spoiler alert.
Hashtag.
Yeah. Obviously, one cool thing was you get to see Deathstroke in the bunker. That was crazy. And then he literally just beats the shit out of everyone, which was a little unnerving, right? Because we're rooting for, obviously it had to happen in terms of storytelling, but you're rooting for Team Arrow, and then they just got every single person got absolutely, you know, obliterated. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a close to a fair fight. It just goes to exacerbate, that's a big word, how much of a badass that Deathstroke really is.
Yes, and that he is going to be a handful, to say the least.
You know, and that's probably why in all my notes and stuff, anytime I put the word Deathstroke, I get all fucking excited. It's because the CW set him up to be a major badass. Like, honestly, the CW set him up to be more of a badass than he is in the damn comics.
Yeah, he's kind of a tweener in the comics. Obviously, he's kind of like DC's sort of answer to Deadpool. Not exactly, but like that style. Not the style, but like who he is, I guess.
Yeah, and he's just a mercenary.
Yeah, he just kind of comes back from everything. So, but no, he is not considered like maybe this sort of high up or this sort of smart, or what's the word I'm looking like this sort of, I guess,
dominant.
Yeah, there we go. As maybe he is, like I said, in the comics, he's just not. And he's also a tweener in the comics, more so than like a pure villain, I think. It was still pretty cool to see. He's still my favorite bad guy in Arrowverse, really. You know, him and then some of the Flash villains, of course, Zoom and Reverse Flash. But
speaking of the Flash, this is the first episode we see a crossover, little mini crossover. We see Caitlin and Cisco.
This is the first time we get truly introduced to them, right?
It wasn't much. It was maybe like 5 minutes long or so. Yeah,
it wasn't very long. Although it was very intense, right? Because they got to meet Slade, and I thought that was pretty crazy. He's like, "Hey, man, how you doing?" Cisco talking to the security guard, and then he just falls over in a pool of blood and with a knife in his back, and then they start running. I thought it was a nice little crossover. Kind of gives sort of who Cisco is, and then Caitlin's obviously the straight lady who just plays it straight. She gets a little more loose as the show progresses, but it sort of kind of set the tone for who they're going to be. We didn't mention this, but Slade's goal was to steal the skeleton key that they got from the Clock King, right? Was that his name?
Yeah.
A few episodes before.
Old Teabag.
Obviously, Cisco mentions that Iris has been visiting him, and then Felicity kind of like, what? Which I thought was pretty cool.
And Cisco says Iris is Barry's something. Because they're not dating yet, but anybody that watches Flash knows that Iris is the love.
Yes. And it was pretty cool to kind of like, obviously we had to push Felicity away from Flash because that wasn't going to be a thing.
Yeah, they're doing a really good job like toying with her emotions, by the way. I know we ain't got there yet, but rewatching all of this stuff and knowing the conclusion of the whole Arrow series, like they do a really good job at pushing her emotions around.
Yes, and she does a great job with it. Like she always appears flustered. That's kind of like the point, right? Because she's always like stumbling over her words and always saying the wrong thing. But she does a great job of like maintaining her stature and who she is. Quentin gets beat up in jail, unfortunately. And then that's when Arrow meets up with Laurel to talk about it, which I thought was pretty cool. But then the more important part was what I've already kind of sort of talked about with Quentin and Laurel. And Laurel saying that she knows who the Arrow is, and Quentin basically saying, I don't want to. That whole moment right there, as much as I love the Deathstroke stuff, for me, obviously, I'm more the dramatic guy. You're more the action guy.
It was a pretty impactful moment for sure.
Yeah, that was like the moment of this episode for me. Like I was like, man, like, and that was the first time I felt like Laurel listened.
Yeah.
Like for 1.5 seasons, I feel like no matter what anybody tells Laurel, she just doesn't listen.
Right.
And then like this was like the first time I felt like she truly listened to what he had to say. And then the cool thing was she kind of goes badass after that. She was like, listen, you're gonna release my dad from custody or from prison. And they're like the DA who is so slimy. There's no redeeming qualities about her throughout the entire series so far.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh,
she's
but
another
he's
one of
18
those
months.
Yeah, she's another one of those bitches that they portrayed her as.
Yeah, I just didn't.
Like if
there was nothing.
If the DA and Moira and Isabel were all in a room together, it'd just be a bitch fest.
Yeah, she was definitely in that. Definitely in the Moira, like what's what I'm looking for? Like the old guard. Like they're like the older cats, older ladies who are just kind of like, we know our shit. But she rolled over pretty quick, didn't she?
Yeah. You
better choose your battles. You better be better at choosing your battles, sort of thing. And I was like, dang. But Laurel just like splicing into her. I was like, man. This is what I was waiting for. This is the Laurel I knew he was going to get, It was pretty cool. One of the crappy things that happens was Oliver choosing to go after Slade versus getting Thea to sign the papers to keep the assets.
Just shows you where his head's at.
Yep. And then when he finally gets there, it's Roy who's in the centrifuge, not Slade. And that was a good little turn of the key. Or, sort of like...
it was a good what the fuck moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And that they easily found him, and then having them save Roy, and then Dig saving Oliver from Isabel and shooting her twice in the chest. I was like, dang, I forgot she died here. And then Slade, putting her in the centrifuge and having her become which was kind of unusual because nothing really about her came off like she had the Mirakura in her, which I thought was unusual.
Yeah.
But I guess she got shot with the cure in one of the future episodes. So that's probably why.
And you figured Oliver would have found that out when they was fucking in Russia.
Yeah. Well, not yet, right? She doesn't. She gets on Mirakura here, so they were screwing around before that. She wasn't a.
Did they?
She hadn't died yet.
Did they unveil that in the episode? I must have glossed over that.
Yeah. So in this episode right here, she dies, and then Slade hooks her up to the Mirakura and brings her back to life.
Oh, I must have glossed right on over that.
Yeah. I think it was at the very end of the episode. So because everyone thinks she's dead. Nobody thinks that she's alive. She's been, disappearing for a while. And then just quick about the flashbacks. Anatoly is getting ready to torture Ivo. And then he mentions that there's a cure. And then they decide, hey, listen, let's give him the quick death if he tells us the cure. And then Sarah was trying to do it and Oliver did it for her. And her saying thank you. And I thought that was a good little tidbit. And Anatoly proving that he is like one of the best little characters. I really enjoy Anatoly. He's like, he makes some flashbacks for me.
Yeah, he's super comical.
Yeah, he does. Him and his I know this is getting ahead of ourselves, but I like when he was like Proshnich, I guess that's saying like good luck or something. And Oliver says it poorly and he goes, I teach you Russian too. And I just really enjoyed Anatoly. He's great in the flashbacks. Next episode is episode 20, Seeing Red. We're definitely in the home stretch, right? This is one of the final 4 episodes. This one, as much as I like this episode, I don't like the way they sort of pushed Roy in this episode. I get it, because he's supposed to not be able to control, and he has more Mirakuru in his system than he normally would have, I guess. But for him to kind of do that, I don't know, man. It seems sort of out of character, but I guess since they didn't do I guess if they did a better job setting up what happens when you do this, maybe this would make more sense. But him kind of going on this rampage just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree with that, because even when he first got injected with the Mirakuru, he wasn't like this. I mean, he was pretty much just a zombie throughout this whole episode. Just a rage-induced zombie. Like, he said no words. The only thing he did was when the officers tried to capture him or whatever, like he snapped that one guy's leg and and stab the other guy, and that's it.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I guess it was to show the bounds in which Mirakuru can push you, but because I remember he's like seeing Thea, and Thea's telling him to kill, or I'm sorry, and Thea's telling Roy to kill her. So I don't know if there's some parts of which is weird because the exact opposite's sort of happening with Slade, where Slade is instead being told to kill people by Shadow, but Thea's telling Roy to kill her. I don't know that. I guess that part's I was sort of confused about. I don't know. Next up, like Moira tells Blood that she's dropping out of the race for the mayor, that she's choosing to be a mother versus a mayor, and that was what her campaign manager told her. She can't be both, and that she wanted to try to save Thea. Moira knows that Oliver is the Arrow, and she couldn't be more proud. And I think that right there, that's one of those like you said, that's a touching moment, and I 100% agree. That moment where Moira knows and she doesn't bother to tell until finally where I don't remember what Oliver said. Oliver said something, and that's when she was like, I know. And he's like, what? And she's like, yes, I know that you are the Arrow. And I thought that was, like you said, super impactful.
It really showed Moira's character change come around.
Oh, dude, yes. And well, so the crappy thing is that we get this, and I think the point was to build up what's coming.
Yeah.
Because to be honest with you, I've hated Moira up until the last like 2 or 3 episodes. Well, hate's a strong word, but I've really disliked her character. Like I just haven't really liked the flow of the character. Haven't really enjoyed what she's done.
That's about how they do up every character, isn't it?
Yeah. They do a great job building them up right at the end.
They make them, not to tie into wrestling here, but they make them a heel throughout the whole damn show. And then right before they die, they turn into a baby face.
Yeah. Like, I know this is, again, we're kind of going off topic, but a great example is Yondu in the Guardian of the Galaxies, right? He's like a bad guy. Movie. Okay. Well, he's a bad guy. He's a guy who, he took in Star-Lord, but he's a bad guy through the whole first movie, and then he basically sacrifices himself to save them. And I think it's in the second movie. So it's like all the bad stuff he did is just kind of washes away. And I thought that was pretty cool. They do the same thing more or less with Moira here, where she decides that she doesn't want to drop out for mayor, and then we'll get to the end in a second. I don't want to talk about that just yet. I'm gonna cover some of this other stuff, and then we'll talk about it because it's crazy. Sarah saying that she's leaving Oliver and that they're not going to be together anymore. Oliver had mentioned trying to move in and stuff, which is kind of funny because in an earlier flashback, that's what pushed Oliver towards Sarah, was because Laurel wanted to move in, which I thought was pretty crazy, and that she wanted to kill Roy. And the past 5 or 6 years of her life had been consumed with that, and that she became too accustomed to killing, which I thought was true. She was a member of the League of Assassins. She said that she knows there's still good in Oliver, right?
And they set that plot up, in previous episodes too. Like with Sarah not wanting to stay in Starling City, talking to Quentin.
Yeah, well, I think it's because she just became familiar with that life, and she felt like there was nothing she could do in Starling City, even if she wanted to. But here it is. Here's what the 19 episodes up to this point has basically been leading up to, right? The moment we've all been waiting for.
Moira, Oliver, and Thea are all riding in the limo, and then Thea mentions something about our whole relationship has been built on lies, and Moira says, I completely agree, and she goes to drop this bombshell of a truth that you think it is, and then all of a sudden the limo gets wrecked.
I was watching this with Christina. She had come in, and I go, oh, this is the episode. Like and I was like, oh gosh. And obviously I knew it was coming because I already knew this happens, right? Because this is the second run through for me. But I just remember saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is the episode. There's nothing sadder than watching. Well, first of all, she gets a huge redemption in here, which is wonderful. But watching Oliver, and he's like still not fully in it. And then Thea does a great job like selling, hey, listen, I don't know what's going on here, and I'm scared. Yeah. And then for Moira to stand up and say, I'm not going to let my son choose. I will do it so that they don't feel it, is the most impactful moment in the entire show up to this point.
And you even, because they even, like Slade's pointing a gun at Myra, and then after she says that spiel, he kind of puts the gun away, and you're kind of thinking in your head, well, maybe Moira's words kind of had an impact. And then Slade turns around and he says something along the lines of, "That's an awful lot of courage you have to do what you just volunteered to do. I wish your son had that much." And then turns around and stabs her in the fucking chest with his sword.
Oh God, it tore my heart out because it did a great job of like we said, we haven't really cared for Moira up to this point. This entire episode puts Moira from like a middle of the pack character to one of the top maybe 3 or 4 characters in the show up to this point. And it's like all it took was for her standing up and saying, "Listen, if I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna take it. It is what it is." Because Oliver did. She says, "I don't want Oliver to have to make the choice." And yes, for Slade to say, "That's a whole lot of courage you have. I wish your son had the same amount," is fucking awesome. I cannot explain enough sort of the feeling. And then the unusual part, I guess, was Oliver gets mad because he thinks he's going to kill Thea too, and he just cuts Thea loose and walks away. God, dog. The moment right after that is just like, it's just gut wrenching, right? Thea's lost her dad already. She thought she lost her brother. She lost Roy. Now she just lost her mother. It is. And then Oliver just passes back out like he's done. I guess there's some assumption that he probably got beat up a little bit because I can't believe that. I know he was already hurting from his leg, but I don't know. I get like he's been through way worse in my mind. You know what I mean? That part I struggle with a little bit.
There's still a lot of things that don't make sense in the movie realm.
And then the flashbacks, we won't have to talk about a lot, but they're setting the stage for obviously future episodes, saying that Oliver, or showing how much a mother's love would protect Oliver.
That's all they're doing,
Yeah. Well, it does set the stage. We find out he has a kid in like episode 5, season 5, whatever. Spoiler.
Right. Hashtag.
But
yeah, they were mainly doing it to boast that whole, Moira dropping out of the race to be a mother first, and then she getting ready to tell the truth in the limo, and then all of a sudden now we like Moira, and the flashbacks are just helping boast that value, saying there's nothing that you won't do for your unborn kid, that kind of stuff.
And she got paid a handsome salary. She got $2 million for an unborn baby. So
oh shit,
she made out okay. the next episode, to be honest, it's episode 21 called City of Blood. This one was going to be a struggle no matter how good this episode was. It was going to be very difficult to follow up what just happened. Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, kind of hard to top stuff like that.
I think they did a pretty good, or at least attempted to do a pretty good job with the leading off with the funeral. And then having Walter there was amazing. I think Walter was an underused character, especially in season 2. I get it. The whole way it all worked out. But him and Quentin have been my 2 favorite characters throughout the show, who are not a main, quote unquote, main character. And because he's just such a good, like, stoic, honest presence in the show. Having him at the funeral and kind of like a little bit after that was awesome. Oliver not being there just proves that, I'll be honest with you, he's slightly selfish. And
I didn't take it that way. See, whenever I watched it and I seen Oliver not at his mom's funeral, I took it as he's just so broken that he couldn't attend the funeral.
I guess I struggled because I did like what Blood said, where he was like, what did he say exactly? People deal with grief in different ways. And I thought that was good to try to quote unquote, like, not quote unquote, but to cover for Oliver not being there. And I get it. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, that maybe he felt fully responsible. In a lot of the ways, he felt shameful for not being able to protect his family, which was the whole point of wearing the fucking mask in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So I guess you could take it that way. But in my eyes, it's still slightly selfish. Like, this is your mom, dude. You know what I mean? I don't know. We also meet that Isabel we realize that Isabel isn't fully dead, right? At least we have her back as the CEO, right? At this point, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Because we kind of knew she wasn't dead, but she hadn't been back in the CEO style yet. He wrote CW, stop doing this shit. I kind of agree. Laurel thinks there's a connection. I think Laurel doesn't get enough credit for her detectiveness. And I think Quentin makes a statement about that, doesn't he?
Yeah.
If you ever decide to give up this lawyering stuff, you'd be a pretty good spy, I think is what he says. I thought that was a nice little tidbit. But Laurel thinks there's a connection between Blood and Slade, since Blood is now the mayor instead of Moira.
Moira.
Since she was killed by Slade. Obviously, they find out how Mr. Tech Whiz that they have on staff finds out that Blood had written a sort of like sad note or like a press release after she had passed away, but he wrote it like 2 days before that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of nuts, right? How stupid of Blood, right? To get how stupid are you? Like that doesn't make any sense.
Well, the thing is, it was the timestamp of when it was written.
Yeah.
He didn't,
I'm with
he
you.
didn't write the date on it. It was
Yeah.
just the timestamp of when it was saved to the computer.
Right. But still, I mean, I guess you have to write. I just think it's dumb. He's a damn mayor, for Christ's sake. You tell me he can have someone else write a press release?
Yeah. I'm not arguing that.
Jeez Louise. Felicity's kind of pushing towards the bad stuff, right? She thinks Oliver might be dead. He's been captured by Slade. Yada yada yada. They visit Amanda Waller. Oh,
yeah. They go to Argus to track down the Arrow.
Yeah, man. And then Diggle shows up and she goes, she says, all of your favors have run out. And he goes, I'm not here for me. I'm here to find Oliver. She was kind of still iffy about it, you know? I think that Amanda Waller has, you want to believe she has the goodness of everybody at mind.
Not the way they portray her.
Yeah, but it's hard to have any sort of like positive feelings about her, right?
Most certainly.
Isabel gives Thea a notice to move out of the club since Moira is gone. The bunker is below the club, so yeah. What's going on now?
Mm-hmm.
Laurel, being the brilliant spy that she is, plants a bug to access Blood's computer, which I've already mentioned. That sort of. I already mentioned that what happens with that, but I thought that was pretty crazy that she ended up planting a bug of all things, right?
Yeah.
Diggle and Felicity find Oliver in the second bunker, which he had sort of secured just in case, or as his ability to get, or his place to get away, which I thought was kind of crazy. But I get it, because once he started recruiting people, it was going to not be that way anymore.
Yeah, he didn't have a man cave to go to anymore.
Yeah. And I guess what happens later in this episode kind of proves more of your point than anything, because Oliver's just like, I don't care. I just want to die. Like, I don't want anything else to happen. I'd rather just let him kill me.
Yep.
Which I thought was sad to see him so broken and so like defeated.
Well, we've seen him like this before in this season.
Yeah. And maybe that they didn't do a great job maybe that way, I guess, but I don't know. I think that this one, they definitely, in my mind, this is the first time I felt like he truly is broken. Like,
yeah, I still feel like it'd been more impactful though if they would have left out the first time that he got into this whole mindset, like this funk.
Yeah, no, I agree. They do a great job of sort of setting it up that he's really gotten his ass kicked, but at the same time, you're right. Like, had they not had him fall down already, when he finally fell down, it would have meant more.
Yeah,
I agree to that.
Granted, the thing that gave it a little more presence this time is when Oliver goes to see Thea at their house. Thea mentions that she wants to leave town and she doesn't want Oliver to try and stop her, and Oliver supports her decision to leave. But it's more so Oliver saying his goodbyes to her because he's going to go give himself up to Slade. And then Laurel shows up and tries to talk some sense into Oliver not to end his life. And that was a pretty impactful moment too, especially from Laurel. That was some really good acting from her. Like, probably one of the first few times we've ever seen her be like super sincere and powerful, like in the way that she's talking to Oliver. But the weird part is she tells Oliver that Blood's working with Slade, and that's kind of when he, like, you know, raises his eyes up a little bit and kind of like something clicked in his head.
Yep.
So it's like all that shit that Laurel just said to you, and the only thing that got you out of the funk is when she said Blood was working with Slade. Really?
Yeah. I guess he felt like maybe he had an in. I guess. I don't know, because I did enjoy when they went out to dinner. Like, I guess it was like a sushi restaurant. I guess that was what it was supposed to be, or I guess some sort of Japanese or Chinese restaurant. When he says, "I know that you're working for Slade, yada yada yada, and I'm the Arrow," and then I thought
he said that shit he said that shit so nonchalantly too.
Yeah.
He said this. He said that like it's just a casual conversation between friends.
Yes, I thought that was really hilarious. The sort of like, I know who you are, and I'm the Arrow, and I'm gonna fuck you up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I did like that. You know, obviously, they set the groundwork for what's going to happen. where that's working with Slade is not what you think is going to happen, is not what's going to actually happen.
Yeah, and he mentions that, well, Slade has already promised me the mayor, and he's delivered. What have you promised? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, why do you call him the Crow? You said Oliver finds the Crow blood, and his baby Deathstrokes are.
Because it was mentioned in an episode that was what his actual name was.
Oh, is that what his name is? Okay.
Yeah.
I had never heard that. I guess I wasn't. I guess you were paying a little more attention than I was. I do enjoy you called Isabel Bitchstroke, though.
Yeah. It's because, if I'm not mistaken, when we first saw that Scarecrow mask, I just said it. I typed in Scarecrow, like Batman knockoff, but they really did say that his name was the Crow, even though they didn't mention it really prior. And
Isabel goes by the name Ravager. Is what her actual name is, but Bitchstroke sounds just as good.
I don't ever remember hearing Ravager in the show.
No, they don't call her. I don't think they ever mentioned Ravager, but that's what her name is. I guess maybe she's in the comics or something. I don't know.
I just called her Bitchstroke because she's a bitch and she's wearing a Deathstroke mask.
And I don't know if they had mentioned it by this point. I think they did, but they talked about how, I think it was this episode where they talk about what happened, right? And again, it's sort of ridiculous. So she's an intern and she's sleeping with Robert there, which is Oliver's dad, which is gross, right? So she slept with Oliver's dad and Oliver. And then I
think that was the episode prior.
Was it the episode prior? But still, that little tidbit was still weird. Like that's what motivated you to do all of this?
Yeah.
Was being scorned by Robert.
And she's like,
we
were at the airport ready to leave, and then he got a phone call that Thea had fallen off her bicycle or something.
Her horse, yeah.
Yeah, her horse. Yeah. And I told him not to go, and I'm a mad little pretty girl that didn't get my way.
Yes, like I was like, okay, like I didn't know what else to say. I was like, okay, whatever. The flashbacks. This one's kind of cool, man. Anatoly getting it moving, or getting it operational. He ain't got it moving yet. And them having to launch the torpedo. And it has to be manually controlled because that's how the Japanese did things with their kamikazes, which I thought was crazy. Peter volunteering himself to help the greater good. I wrote down a note, but I think I did not write it down correctly. But anyway, I'm going to paraphrase what I wrote because I don't know if I said it exactly. And Peter says it here. He says, the essence of heroism is that you die so that others can live. And
that's right, because they use that quote many times.
Yeah, and I thought that was super powerful. It gave Peter... even though we had only met him a couple times, it truly gave him a sense of like, he's doing it for the greater good, right? And I thought that was awesome. And obviously it worked. He manually controlled it straight correctly and got them free, which I thought was pretty nuts. And
but what if
he gave him a nice little send off?
But what if he didn't have radiation poisoning? Would he have volunteered anyway?
I don't know. We assume
these are the moments you got to think about, because like. Me as a person, like, I ain't gonna volunteer myself to steer a fucking torpedo.
But I would be the one sitting in the back, right?
Yeah. But if I know that I'm gonna die because I've got, this thing that's already been proven to kill people that's, untreatable, then yeah, why not?
Yeah. Well, I guess we don't have to think about that, right? Because he did have radiation poisoning and he made the sacrifice for the greater good of the entire team.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like if I had my homies trapped on a submarine and they needed to get off that rock that they were stuck on, and I already know that I'm going to die. It's just like watching Resident Evil. You get bit by a zombie, you're going to die, so just go do something good with your remaining minutes.
Yep. It was a great, to be honest with you, I really enjoyed the flashbacks, but because this is where it's starting to get good. Now, here's the next episode, the episode before the final episode. We're in the home stretch, right? Episode 22, which is Streets of Fire. I got the first little note here as Felicity runs over Bitchstroke with the van. I agree that I'm not so sure that Isabel makes a great convincing bad person.
Bro, I started laughing my ass off when that happened.
I knew it was coming because I remember because Diggle was getting his ass kicked. The mask, I think, is more the reason it just isn't... Like, if the mask covered her whole face and she still had the ponytail thing, it'd be cool, but like the fact that it cut away from her mouth, and the mouth, especially hers, is kind of unusual. So it's not like, I mean, she's still pretty.
She has a very squared chin, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't do her any favors, I guess.
Yeah,
But
she's
I
still
thought it was
hot.
pretty cool.
The CW don't cast
Yeah.
ugly chicks.
No, yeah, we had a discussion about this that basically they do a great job of cast. Well, I mean, they don't really cast. I don't want to go down that road, but both of they cast very pretty women, and the men aren't terrible. I guess if that's your thing. They do a great job of not casting.
No, they
ugly
put
people, I guess.
They put old Teabag in there.
Listen, I'm sure there's plenty of women who fawn over old Teabag. Maybe not Teabag because Teabag was such a terrible, bad character. he didn't have very many redeeming qualities as Teabag, but as the Clock King, he is what it is.
He got money.
Yep, Oliver teaching Laurel how to shoot the bow, which I thought was pretty cool. In the you said it missed an opportunity for a funny moment there. Go for it.
Oh, whenever they cleared the debris and he just walked through the little hole that was perfectly shaped for him to walk through, but I'll ignore that. And then he just walks in and says, "Nice shot." Like they could have done something better there.
Yeah.
Like, you know how when Lance said, well, if your lawyering doesn't work out, you could be one hell of a spy. They could have had that same moment with Oliver. That was just a setup for a good joke, and I don't feel like they took it.
Yeah, I don't think they do a great job making Oliver funny at all. Like, he has some incidental moments, but for the most part, I don't think they do a great job of giving him any sort of break from being a character or a like Batman, right? He's never really given any comical moments for the most part. So he just kind of is always serious. So that's what I guess all the ancillary characters are for.
Yeah, he has his, I guess now that you say that, he only has like his little one-liners. Like when Dig asked him, whenever he put that hold on that security guard, he's like, "Can you teach me how to do that?" And he goes, "No."
Yeah. Yeah, it's because of Dig. So if Dig wasn't there, had Dig not said that, maybe it wouldn't have been as funny. But it's definitely them two. When those two are together, or even when Felicity and Oliver are together, it's the interactions, not necessarily Oliver.
Well, that's because Felicity steals the show with her comedy because of her awkwardness.
Yes. I think she plays the awkward, cute blonde better than most, for sure. Mm-hmm. She does a great job.
And she's nice to
moving
look
on,
at.
Doesn't hurt. Malcolm comes back to save Thea from one of the baby strokes, as you call at the train station. Slade has their phones tracked and is aware of the driver carrying the cure, which I think was crazy. I enjoyed that they finally got the cure. Star Labs re-engineered the Mirakuru that Oliver had taken and was able to create a cure, which I thought was a nice little, I guess it proved sort of how smart they are at Star Labs leading into Flash, which I mentioned that Flash doesn't happen until season 3 earlier, but that's because it launched with season 3. And that's what I kept thinking, because obviously we had the introduction to Barry Allen earlier this season. Season 1 of Flash starts when season 3 of Arrow starts. So that's where I was getting confused earlier. And then Pike, I'll be honest with you, I never enjoyed Pike. He always comes off as an asshole the entire time. But what's so, I guess what I find so funny is that Pike arrests Lance, arrests him, and then is like, "Here you go, here's your detective badge. Go lead all these officers to deal with this bullshit because I don't want to." Like, what a douche. Even in trying to do something nice, you can't even help but, just not care about him.
Yeah, come off like a dickhead.
Yeah, even when he's trying to be a nice guy. Obviously, the action starts to pick up in this episode just because we have more fight scenes, because all the baby strokes are all around.
Such a good action episode.
To be honest, for me, it was a little, I don't want to say it was, but it was a good mix, especially from all the sort of drama we've had up to this. It did a great job of sort of breaking that up. One of Slade's henchmen comes in and kills the DA, and Blood gets mad and frustrated that he realizes he has literally no control over what's happening. And that was like the first moment where he kind of realizes that, right?
I order you to let her go home.
Yeah.
And then Baby Stroke or Deathstroke Jr. snaps her neck and says, "I don't take orders from you."
Which I was like, oh, snap. Because Blood, at the end of the day, I think he proves that he had the city in mind with everything that he wanted to do. He just happened to, lay in bed with the wrong people, so to speak, right?
Yeah, I kind of think Blood is kind of like a mini version of Merlin. Just, the only difference is Merlin was willing to kill innocent people to do something that was for the greater good. Blood, on the other hand, doesn't want to take innocent lives.
Yeah, well, he was told that they was just going to basically go out there and cause chaos. So he's like, "Oh, we'll fight through this as
stir up a ruckus."
Yeah, and then they're out there killing people, and he's like, wait, what the hell just happened? And then, like you said, there was their beam of hope is that the cure has been stolen. And then Oliver is saying they're done, and Felicity convinced him otherwise. And like you said, she does a good job of overacting this part. So much emotion and words in her words and her tone, and that I agree on. I even wrote that in my 4 notes that I wrote. I didn't do a great job this time with my notes, but Felicity's speech to be like, "No, you're going to keep fighting. This is not going to end this way," was awesome. And then, right thereafter, which I thought was kind of funny, but right thereafter, Blood kind of calls and is like, "I want to try to help kind of sort of fix this issue." And he gives the Mirakuru cure to Oliver and sort of gives him that sort of redemption, which I thought was wonderful. And that's exactly what needed to happen, obviously, for the team. And then for him to be like, "I'll tell Slade myself, like it's no big deal." And then Isabel to double freaking sword him right in the chest. I was like, "Oh shit." And then Waller brings in soldiers, but wants to just sort of keep people from coming out. And then, it's just going to blow up all of Starling City. He wrote in there, "Why she always got to blow shit up?" She gives Oliver until dawn before she blows it up. Oliver starts by injecting the cure into Roy first, and then Thea shoots Merlin, which I thought was pretty funny. She just boom, boom, In the flashback, the bonding between Oliver and Anatoly, awesome. That moment right there was a great moment. Him saying that, you basically met a friend for life, and basically how he kind of became part of Bharatva. And then Oliver frees Sarah, but says he wants to try and cure Slade, but Slade already has the cure, even though somehow he ends up with the cure in his hand. I don't know how that happens. I don't know.
They got dropped just sort of skirmish, probably.
Okay, because he, in the next episode, that becomes a bigger thing.
Yeah.
So, but it was all setting up basically the finale, which is episode 23, Unthinkable. That's all I can say. It's like you can't really take a deep breath yet, right?
There's a lot of shit still going on.
Yeah, man. They just kind of jump right into it. Like you said, there had been a lot of action, but it just keeps kind of going forward. And the action does not stop in this one, right? It just keeps on pushing. We find out Merlin didn't die. He's wearing Kevlar. And then he just kind of like a puppy dog following Thea. Like he's like, "But Thea," and she's like, "Oh my God, just leave me alone." I thought that was pretty funny.
Whenever he said something along the lines of, "I know you're my daughter because you didn't even hesitate to put me down." Like, what kind of crazy man are you?
Yeah, and that's what she was saying. She's like, "You're a freaking psycho." It's wild. Roy being last thing he remembers after the cure is that he's leaving town, or that he was leaving town heading for Bloodhaven. Nyssa comes back, which looking great, with some assassins, because Sarah said she would go back to the League of Assassins if she helped. Oliver didn't want to kill Isabel, and Nyssa just neck slapped her. Dude, Nyssa had put her. Dude, I was like, "Dang, girl," because she just put her knee up. It's like, done. I was like, "Oh snap!"
Pun intended.
Yeah, Nyssa was like, "This is the reason why your city is in this mess." She's just throwing it right back at his ass. "You don't have the heart to do what we have to do." Yada yada, whatever exactly she said. But I was like, yes, that's exactly the truth. And then Laurel gets kidnapped by Slade. I like Quentin, like you said, saying, "Hey, listen, I know that you said you weren't going to kill anymore, but you need to get your shit together, okay? We need to kill this dude." And I thought that was pretty great. Roy and Thea meet back up, and they kind of decide that they want to leave together, but Roy saying that he needed to go help the Arrow first. I thought that was a pretty touching moment between the two of them. Really sort of set what we thought was going to set the tone for the following season. Oliver saying that Slade took Laurel because he wants to kill the one that he loves, but he took the wrong woman to Felicity. I thought that was pretty crazy. I thought that to be honest with you, the ending where it was sort of a turn of fate and that it was just a ruse, I definitely was like, wait. They are already starting this?
Yeah, we didn't know this at this point in the episode. That's why I put the two mind-blown emojis in there.
No, I agree. But I'm saying at that moment, even I was like, I don't remember this being this early. I thought this was a couple seasons, at least another season away.
Well, and, I mean, there's always been There's always been some little jabs between the relationship of Felicity and Oliver. Granted, it's always been Felicity's more infatuated with him, but we still see some signs of Oliver. Maybe could think of Felicity in that way too.
Yes, I did. But I'm just saying, like, I didn't remember it being this early. But then again, I was kind of off on all the seasons anyway. But
no, I didn't either. Definitely not until way later.
I remember when Lila comes back in. I can't remember if it was this episode or the previous episode, but she comes in with a damn rocket launcher.
Yeah,
it's like on a damn. I guess it had to be this episode. She comes in and she's like, she shoots one of the, I guess, the baby strokes, right?
Yeah.
With a rocket, and I was like, oh dang, Yeah. And then the two of them go to Argus to free the prisoners from all this crap, and then they break in to force Waller to call off the drone strike, and that's where Waller lets Diggle know that he's going to become a father. And I thought that was pretty shady or pretty shitty of her to do. Slade didn't pick the wrong woman because he ends up with Felicity still, and Slade has both of them. And then Felicity, I guess we see the flashback a little bit, right, where they show why he said that to Felicity, because he gave her a cure, and then she stabs Slade in the neck with the cure and runs away. And obviously, Oliver finally got ahead, and he outsmarted Slade using his own tactics against him because he knew that the house had been rigged and with cameras. So he used that to his advantage. And I'll be honest, I enjoyed the fight scenes, but I didn't like them jumping back and forth between present time and the flashback. I think that took too much away from it.
I mean, it was kind of cool because they tried to mirror the images between main and present, which would still continue the whole story. I can appreciate that on their behalf because I'm sure that wasn't very easy to do.
No, I agree. It lessened the fight, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree. There was no really badass epic showdown between Oliver and Slade.
Right. We never got that. Like, you built up 23 episodes basically for this fight scene, and this fight scene was like 2.5 minutes long. No, not even. There's like maybe a minute and a half long. That's including the flashback parts. So I was like, meh. I mean, I get it because you don't want to tell the story twice, but it could have been longer. I just felt like you built all this up for the fight scene, man. Like for the head-to-head showdown. And then we get like 3 minutes, probably total. Maybe it was 3 minutes of the total fight scenes between both of them. To be honest with you, I did enjoy that they used luck in the flashbacks. Right, he didn't win because he outfoxed or outsmarted or outstrengthed Slade. He won because the boat hit something and dropped all those
beams on him.
Yeah. And he just won by pure luck, really.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Oh, I'm going to maintain my promise. I'm still going to kill you." Yada yada yada. And Sarah gets washed away, which we didn't mention. We haven't really talked about that, but she gets pulled down again. I was like, Jesus Christ. I mean, we knew it had to happen, right? Because she has to go to the league. But I thought that was kind of funny, her getting whisked away again.
I wrote that in my notes somewhere.
Yeah. We weren't there yet. I just remembered that while we were talking about it. And then I thought that was a pretty cool little bit.
Like and then obviously remnants of the Queen's Gambit, her getting sucked out of the back. Yeah.
Yep. A good little repeat, I guess. And then we knew she had to go away, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I let's see what else. Sarah, Nyssa. Well, and then of course he gets the upper hand on Slade finally, and then he ties him up with the arrows. And I thought that was sort of
whack.
Yeah, sort of anticlimactic. I do know that. Well, I don't know, but I remember reading somewhere that Slade wasn't supposed to just disappear after this season. Like, he was supposed to have more episodes throughout past this season, but he didn't. I guess he didn't like the way that the character was being portrayed. So he just left and didn't want to do it, and they didn't want to, I guess, recast the character. So they just didn't bother.
Yeah, because it was a while. It was a while before, spoiler alert, we saw him again
like season 6 or 7.
Yeah,
it was a long time after. Basically, when the island's getting blown up. Spoilers all here. I apologize, but yeah, it was a little goofy, I guess. I don't know. Obviously, we keep moving on with the drone strike gets called off because they got Slade. Like you said, all is well. Sarah and Nyssa finally are heading back. You got this little quote in here that there is nothing stronger than parents' love, and I would die before anything happens to Sarah, which is what Lance says. And then
Nyssa said that.
Nissa says that, and then Lance sells. Oh well, here's hoping. Yes, yes, I got you now.
Little
Because
comedic
that
bit
she
again.
would die. Yeah, that she. Well, what if she was saying that she would die before anything happened to Sarah? Yeah. And he says, "Well, here's hoping that she dies." Lance's timing is impeccable.
He has really good.
Sarah,
he has really good little comedic stabs.
Yes, and then Sarah giving the jacket to Laurel, and then him telling her, "Don't get any ideas." And I thought that was first of all a good foreshadowing, and at the same time was a nice little jab by Lance as well.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we this is basically more or less the end of Sarah. I think she comes back every so often, but yes, she's basically off to League of the Legends of Tomorrow, as you wrote in there.
The League of Legends.
Yeah, the League of Legends. The Legends of Tomorrow.
The Legends of Assassins.
Whatever it is. Legends of Tomorrow. And then, she just re-entered the League of Assassins. Obviously, she's not gone away yet because the next season basically centers around the League of Assassins. Anyway, we have Lance collapse, and this is like the first time you sort of think maybe he's not going to make it. It was crazy. It was such a crappy way to leave us, but I get it. You had to set up the next season, but having Lance collapse because he has a lot of internal bleeding from hitting that table. Roy coming back and seeing a note from Thea and saying that she doesn't want to be with him, and then that she decides to join up with Merlin, which is like you wrote #identity crisis, and I 100% agree. It was like, whoa, didn't see that one coming.
Yeah. Honestly, when I was watching this and I first saw that note on the bed, I honestly thought it was written by Merlin.
Yeah.
Acting like Thea.
Right.
Like these are things that I've forgotten about, being years since I've watched this stuff, and this is why that we rewatch it before we podcast it. Because to me, it just made more sense to put that note written from Merlin, as Thea to kick Roy, to push Roy out, because obviously Merlin wants Thea now.
Yes. And maybe it still did. It could, I guess in theory, it still could have been. I don't remember.
Well, no, because
where they went with it.
When Thea was walking to the car, she was all decked out in black leather and stuff. So we already knew that she had already turned over to the bad side. You know what I mean?
If not for nothing else, temporarily. Yeah. I did enjoy but I do enjoy it because it felt like Thea was going to become something finally, right? She was getting a direction.
And she does. Spoiler alert.
Yes. Yeah. Oliver locks up Slade in a prison on an island, and the island that he's actually locked up on is Lian Yu. So he is actually...
Was it Lian Yu? Because I was unsure of that.
Yeah, it was Lian Yu. So he brought him back. That's why he called it Purgatory, which is what Lian Yu is in
See, I think
it's Chinese.
I thought so too, but they also said it was Argus's Supermax prison, and
I think he just said that because they built that on purpose for him to put Slade there.
Yeah, but what they do, just build this motherfucker overnight?
Well, I don't think so. So one of the things is we have flashbacks. Obviously, Amanda Waller knows where this island is because that's where they find Oliver. Because they had to get him from Lian Yu, right? Because he was still technically on Lian. I know he's in the waters where the boat is, but it shows the boat in the background when he's walking towards Felicity and Diggle. The boat hadn't fully capsized, I guess.
I completely
still
glossed
poking
over
up.
that.
Yeah. It's still poking up out of the water. If you go back and watch the last few minutes of that particular, before Waller and him being in Hong Kong, right before that, it shows like a. I guess it doesn't necessarily. You don't know for sure that it's the Amazo, but you basically are under the assumption it is. So yeah, he's rescued later on. Spoiler alert, in like season 6 or 7 from Lian Yu, because that's where his son was. Remember when he got when the island was being exploded or whatever.
Oh, Willem.
Willem. In the flashbacks, obviously he chose to stab him in the eye with the arrow instead of the cure, which I thought was crazy that he would do that.
Red pill, blue pill moment.
Yes, and he chose the wrong damn pill.
Yeah.
One thing I did enjoy, it reminded me of it, where he's like, everything healed fine except for this. And he points at his patch. And I thought that was such a cool little moment with him and Oliver. And then, as a little twist of fate at the end of the episode, we see Oliver in a bed. And then we find out, they have a slow shot crawling up Amanda Waller's legs. And then you realize who it is. And she's like, "Welcome to Hong Kong." And it was like, oh, damn, it was such an insane way to end that episode, right?
Yeah, they're just they're pushing away from Lian Yu. They're just completely wrapping all that shit up. and now they're getting more into, I guess, more so into his introduction in the league too, right?
Yeah. So this is where he meets. Oh, goodness, season 3. He's going to meet. I cannot remember the guy's name, but his wife becomes. I guess she's a member of the Legends of Tomorrow for a little while. I wish I could remember her name. I'm drawing blanks here. We'll talk about that all when we cover season 3. But yeah, this is where he sort of gets sort of familiar with it anyway. And Hong Kong is where he meets the gentleman that kind of. He becomes a part of the League of Assassins. I cannot remember his name.
Yeah, we'll just have to save all that for season 3.
Yeah, but a lot of it is obviously he does say that he doesn't spend all his time on the island, so they had to tell some stories with him off the island, right? Because he didn't spend all 5 years on the island.
Right.
So I thought that was still pretty cool all the same. I guess just I know we've been running pretty long on this particular season, but one thing that I did want to mention is like overall, the season itself was wonderful. It wasn't what I remembered, however, right? We sort of I think we underestimated season 1 and we overestimated season 2. What do you think?
1000%. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I think that season 1 was way better than we both anticipated. Like watching it back now, of course, the ending of season 1 was kind of like meh, but the whole season itself was so much better than like I guess all the storytelling in season 2. We just kind of I guess. We just love Deadshot, like you said. We just love the character. We love Manu Bennett, the gentleman who plays Deadshot.
Deathstroke.
Deathstroke. I kept calling him Deadshot. You're right. I apologize. I did enjoy Deadshot too, but not the same character. Yes, Deathstroke. The gentleman who plays Deathstroke is Manu Bennett, and we enjoy him.
Deadstroke or Deathshot.
Yeah, Deadstroke. Yeah. Or Deadshot. I guess I was thinking about the podcast with Shane. Maybe that's what happened.
Yeah.
I was putting it into moments. But yeah, we enjoy his character so much that maybe we boost up this season a little bit more than maybe it should have been. And
Most
obviously, it's still a great season.
Yeah,
but
not to take anything away, but compared to season 1.
Yeah, it's a great ride, I guess, right? Like it wasn't as like season 1 kind of put you at the pinnacle of the mountain, and then season 2 was like just this awesome ride straight down. I didn't feel like that way, but it isn't like it just like fell off a cliff either. It was definitely an awesome season that sort of had a great beginning, middle, and end. The fight scene could have been better, in my opinion, but other than that, all the little loose ends they tied up, and then all the little phrase they added, I think really made you. I'm excited to watch season 3. What about you?
I'm not really super excited because Deathstroke was my moment for Arrow.
Yeah,
but from what I remember of season 3, there was a lot of good moments that happened. Especially between like Malcolm and Thea and Oliver. So I'm kind of excited to watch it just to refresh that into my mind.
Yeah, I mean, season 3 is going to be about Ra's al Ghul,
right? Yeah, Season 4 is where it's going to start to suck.
Yeah, Damien Dark. I don't know. They could have casted maybe a better character for Damien Dark, maybe.
Snooze fest.
Anyway, yeah. But no, I'm excited for more about the League. Like we get to learn about the League of Assassins. We get to see Nanda Parbat, which is pretty cool. We get to sort of experience sort of who Ra's al Ghul is, and they really cast a great guy to play Ra's al Ghul. He's not maniacal. He's very I'm looking for very stoic, very deliberate about everything that he does. He doesn't have any wasted motions in anything that he does.
They cast him to how he's portrayed in the comics.
Yes, and not how we think of him, right? I think of him sort of like he looks like Doctor Strange, but he just jumps into Lazarus pits. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how I think of him. But instead, he comes off as like a truly as an immortal human, but at the same time as a guy who's sort of like knows who he is and is like totally in control. So I'm excited to at least see kind of where it goes. I can't remember season 3 hardly at all. So it'll be nice to sort of remember it and get to see it again. So with that, unless Bud, you have anything left, we'll go ahead and close this episode out.
No, I don't have anything else left about season 2. If you want to go ahead and give them a sneak peek of what we're going to do next week.
Yeah. And next week, I finally get my moment. I'm excited. We're going to be talking about wrestling, man. Pro wrestling. Wrestling, as he says, or, as they say, it's a joke they make about the South is they call, WRASSLIN wrestling, so I'm excited. It's, as a kid growing up, that was sort of my thing. I talked about it when we talked about the cartoons and anime. I talked about it basically a lot of times. Anytime we talked about my childhood, even when we talked about the video games, some of those podcasts, I talked about how much, my love of wrestling sort of it carried on. I mean, I still watch wrestling to this day. Maybe not to the same extent, of course, but everything has peaks and valleys. It's like my Young and Restless is still going. Well, so is WWE Raw. It's it seems to last my entire life.
That was a terrible comparison.
Well, it is a men's
You
soap
couldn't have
opera.
picked two shows that were at the opposite ends of the spectrum.
Well, my point I was making was that they're both sort of like soap operas in a way because they're weekly, they're episodic. Well, I think they're daily, but either way,
wrestling is a man's soap opera.
Yeah, exactly. And Young and the Restless is not. I'm sure there's plenty of men who enjoy it. Not to take away from them, but I'm just saying it's not the same. So, we're going to spend some time talking about all Bud will be chirping in. My apologies. We'll be chirping in every so often. Yeah, he'll be watching me talk a lot, and it's going to be a good time.
I'll pipe in when the word Stone Cold comes up.
Yes, we'll talk about our favorites for sure. But that's next week, so appreciate you guys listening, and we will see you next week.
Hey, everyone. If you made it this far, we appreciate you listening to the end. If you want to get a hold of us, our social links, we have a Facebook, which you can find Chris and Bud Show. Our Twitter is Chris and Bud Show 1. Chris's personal Twitter would be at Deliberate88. My personal Twitter would be at BudB88. We also have a Discord server that we've launched that's free for everyone to join. You can find the link for that on the Twitter or the Facebook page. Discord is going to be the easiest way to interact with me and Chris. Once again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.